So the New York Giants finally won a game again. They ended their franchise-long 10-game losing streak by dispatching the Indianapolis Colts in what, can you believe it, was a track meet yesterday at MetLife Stadium. We'll talk about it next on Big Blue Breakdown Live. Hi again, everybody. Paul Dottino with you. Happy holidays. New Year's Eve is coming upon us tomorrow. That's why we had to change, of course, our schedule. Another holiday session here on the Big Blue Breakdown. You know, it's really funny, folks. We always like to think that we have an idea of what's going to happen in the upcoming game, whether it's good, whether it's bad, and then sometimes we're pleasantly surprised. Holy smokes, what a surprise we all got yesterday at MetLife Stadium. The New York Giants put forth an unbelievable explosion of offense that I don't think anybody in their right mind could have predicted. You're talking about 45 points. You know, they hadn't scored 40 points in a game since they just manhandled Washington back in week 16 of 2019. That's before the pandemic. Just to put that into perspective, absolutely unbelievable. It was only the third time this year that they had a halftime lead and the first time that they had a halftime advantage since they beat the Cleveland Browns in week 3. I mean, this is indicative of how this season has gone. But man, did they put things together yesterday. Now, I've had a number of folks ask me over the course of the last 24 hours, how in the world did the Giants do that after what we have seen all season long? There was one guy in particular, a dear friend of mine, who had hit me up about it this morning and said, where did that come from? Christine, Big Blue, Eric, we're going to get to your chats in just a few minutes. But I do want to talk about this for just a second because it does deserve an explanation. So I told my friend, I said, listen, it's really very simple what happened with the Giants in this game. First of all, they finally started to make routine plays without self-destructing. I mean, the team that we've seen all season long has been the most unclutched team in football. We have talked about that ad infinitum. Well, in this game, I counted them for one drop. Okay, one. It was Wan'Dale Robinson over the middle, actually to the right side, in what would have been an easy first down conversion. Not a third down, he would have converted the first down. I think it was a second down pass. But then on the next play, he went to the right sideline and made a diving stab and made up for it and converted the first down as the Giants would go in and make it a 2-score game again in the fourth quarter. That's it. One drop. And they immediately made good on it on the next play. So that's one thing that the Giants did differently in this game. What's another one? They won the turnover battle for the first time all season. In fact, they didn't give up a turnover in this game. You'll recall they had a fumble recovery and 2 interceptions, plus 3. As Tom Coughlin always used to say, the team that wins the turnover battle has a huge advantage. In fact, Tom's number, I believe, and I wish I could get him on the program. Tom used to talk all the time that if you were plus 2 in the turnover battle on any given game, you were like going to win 85% of those games. It was that important. You know, he always used to say more games are lost than are won, which has never been more true than with the 2024 New York Football Giants. Okay, what else? What else did the Giants do yesterday? Well, So they reduced their drops. They actually made some routine plays. They won the turnover battle. They actually made some really nice catches. Malik Neighbors made a couple of beauties. Wan'Dale Robinson had a diving stab. Slayton was terrific on his one catch that wound up going for a touchdown. Again, I go back to a previous coach, Dan Reeves. And I've said this to you guys before and used this on Big Blue Kickoff Live for years. One of Dan's favorite phrases, you got to make plays above the X's and the O's. Hey, Christine, Happy New Year. You're the best as well. Let me just write out a little thank you here for that quick pop. I thank you as a super viewer. I do want to get to you guys just a second on the chat, but I want to get this out of the way first because I do believe it's important to understand what exactly happened yesterday. Because this is what you need to know going forward. You know, when you talk about how is this team going to turn things around. So, what else? They made some plays above the X's and the O's. Now, this Giants team has had trouble making just the routine plays all year. Well, in this game, they actually went above making routine plays. They made a few above the X's and the O's. That's how come they had 6 plays from scrimmage of more than 30 yards. And that is incredible. For this team to do that, you know, there are teams around the NFL that will do that on a regular basis. This team had not done that, couldn't even dream of doing that all season. But they did it yesterday. Now, there was another component into making those big plays. Yards after the catch. The Giants were sensational in terms of their yards after the catch yesterday. In fact, I want to give you a number here. I jotted down this number for our game balls and guessers that we put up online last night, actually, around midnight. Malik Neighbors, 7 catches, 171 yards and 2 touchdowns, had 105 yards after the catch. That was supposed to be one of the main components of the Giants' offense this year. Eat up a ton of yards after the catch. And there are a slew of things that go into that. Yak yardage, as they call it, YAC. There are no fewer than like 8 factors, and even more if you want to get really into detail, as to why a pass play will come up with yards after the catch. The Giants have been horrific in yards after the catch all season long. And here Neighbors on his own gets 105 yards after the catch yesterday. According to Next Gen Stats, and this is a good number, okay? He was plus 63 yards for the game. Now, what does that mean? Well, there's a stat that Next Gen Stats keeps. It's called expected yardage above the play. So they look at the play and they say, okay, there's how the play was designed. That's where the route was. That's where the tackler was. Ball is delivered. Guy makes the catch. Now, what should you reasonably expect to get on that play? Anything you do beyond that is positive expected yardage. So Neighbors, because of his juke ability, right, and his ability to force missed tackles, wound up with plus 63 expected yards yesterday. That's out of the 105 yak that he got. The plus 63 expected yardage was the 3rd highest total by any player in a National Football League game this season. I don't know if that really has sunk into anybody yet, but I've read that number at least 10 times today and said, you've got to be kidding me. That is the guy. that the Giants drafted with the 6th overall pick in April. Remember, he had 200-yard games the first month of the season. Came out of the gate real strong. And, people on BBKL like, Paul, there's your headache player. And I'm like, hold on. He's got 2. He's getting there. He's on the verge of being a headache player for opposing team defensive coordinators, but he's not there yet. He's got a few too many drops, and I haven't seen enough of big plays. I got to see his average yards per catch come up and see more big plays. Well, then during that big middle chunk of the season, those things weren't happening. He was getting his catches. Heck, he's got over 100 catches, and I'm not going to bore you and waste time with you guys about how, he's got over 100 rookie catches. He's got over 1,000 rookie receiving yards. We know Tracy also has over 1,000 rookie yards from scrimmage, right? First duo in NFL history since the Saints did it. Actually, the 3rd duo ever in NFL history to have 2 rookies to do that. Okay, fine. I'm not going to bore you with all those details. But for all the catches and the targets that Neighbors was getting, he was still having too many drops and not getting enough average yards per catch. Okay? Then he was getting banged up. You remember he got concussed. That cost him some time. And then he came back. And he was a little bit slow coming back. But now here in the last month of the season, and I put up this comment on Twitter to Brian Baldinger from NFL Network, who had isolated the one comeback catch, the one jump ball, the 50-50 ball that Neighbors came back and made an incredible jump for and hung in the air like Earl the Pearl Monroe in basketball, the Knicks Hall of Famer. Seemed like he was floating like a magician, came back and made a big-time catch for the Giants. And I made the comment that this was only the 3rd 100-yard game for Neighbors this year, but the point is he bookended the season. He started out really good, but still a couple of warts on his game. Then he kind of was more pedestrian for the middle third of the season. And now here at the end of the season, we're now starting to see the total package. We are truly starting to see what Malik Neighbors is and what he can be. Now, what we've seen him do, and I'm going to look at my trusty laptop. You guys know my trusty laptop. I should give this thing a name because it's got all of my secret boards and stats and spreadsheets and stuff that nobody can see. But I'm going to share with you that Malik Neighbors on the season, I've got him down for 10 drops, but his last drop pass was in Dallas on November the 28th. He has been holding on to the ball, and he's also been making some catches above the X's and the O's. Remember, he also scored 2 touchdowns yesterday as well. So what we're now seeing is the growth and the progress of that young rookie. So I bring that to your attention. That is a significant part about what the Giants did. Tudo is back. We've missed him for a couple of weeks. There you go. Oh, well, Tudo chiming in as a big-time super user. And we write a really nice thank you as well to Tudo. My goodness, that is awesome. I'm just going to fire that sucker off. There we go. You're very kind, Tudo. Thank you. He says, Greetings from the entire Italian rugby team, currently in Paris, France. Hey, pray for our victims. Absolutely. Next Saturday, you got a 5:30 Eastern time game against the French club. Tudo, absolutely, by all means. I give you one of these. On behalf of Tommy DeVito and the New York Giants, I am empowered to give you one of these, and I'm giving you one. All right, Tudo? Health and happiness in 2025. And have a wonderful, wonderful game. So now, let me finish up what I'm getting to. The other items that the Giants did, and again, kind of routine, but this one's not. How about a 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown by Smith Marset? New Jersey guy, loving it, having a great time, thrilled all his family and friends at the game. Giants haven't had one of those. And when I told him on the field, when I did the post-game interview on the field for MSG yesterday, I told him right away, I said, that's the first time the Giants have had one of those since 2015. And Dwayne Harris, who was one heck of a special teams player, Harris had a 100-yard kickoff return that year. And when I told him, he couldn't believe it. And then he was bragging to people in the locker room afterwards, telling the writers, I heard they hadn't had one since 2015 here. Wow. I love it. The man was excited, and he deserved to be. So that was another item that made a significant difference in the ball game. Three other items. And again, these are not superhuman things. I told you about the halftime lead. Relatively routine. The Giants' offense, scored on all three of their trips inside the Indianapolis 30, which I have termed the scoring zone. 2 touchdowns and a field goal. Folks, it doesn't sound like a big deal, right? You get inside the other team's 30-yard line, and you really, in this league, you need to be virtually guaranteed points, okay? I get it. The red zone stats that you see only talk about percentage of touchdowns you get when you're inside the 20. I go scoring zone stats. You get inside the other team's 30, you damn well better be able to at least kick a field goal. If you don't get a touchdown, you don't get a touchdown. I get it. That's a blemish. But if you can't score, period, you get inside the other team's 30-yard line, you get into the scoring zone, and you come up with 0, that smells. In fact, it not doesn't smell, it reeks. That has been a bugaboo for the Giants all season. I'll give you a number on that, okay? The Giants in the scoring zone this year, and this is going to blow your mind, they're at 66%, which means 1/3 of the times they've gotten inside the other team's 30, they have come out of that possession with 0 points. Yesterday, they got points on all 3 of those possessions. It does make a difference. Okay. Routine. And it should be. You get inside the other team's scoring zone, it should be routine that you're getting points. So they did something routine yesterday, which was important. The offensive line. How about this? Oh, Christine does another super user hit by Christine. Thank you again. Oh, my goodness. This feels like storage wars, right? When the people start flashing numbers out against each other, trying to get the storage cabinet. Oh my goodness! All right, thank you guys. Thank you. Let's talk about this for just a second now. And I lost my train of thought for one moment, but it's important. Oh yeah, okay. The Giants did not allow a sack yesterday to the Indianapolis Colts. and in fact, only allowed one hit on the quarterback. Kwity Paye, the defensive end, the edge rusher, had one hit in the second half on Drew Lock. I remind you, this was the 9th configuration of the Giants' offensive line this season. Left tackle Illuminor, right tackle Evan Neal, who bounced back and had a strong game yesterday. I know people wanted to get on him. He didn't play so well in Atlanta. He scuffled a little bit. But once again, Evan Neal bounced back and proved that he needs to be part of the Giants' plans in 2025. Now, so what are we looking at here? The Giants, for the first time all season, did not allow their quarterback to get sacked in this game against the Colts. Okay? First time all season, and only allowed one quarterback hit. Again, I stress to you, Illuminor left tackle, Neal right tackle. The rookie undrafted free agent, Jake Kubas, wound up moving into right guard after he made his first NFL start the week before at left guard. Aaron Stinney, veteran free agent they picked up in the offseason from Tampa, wound up coming off concussion protocol. He started at left guard. And then, of course, who was the man in the middle? Greg Van Roten, 10-year vet. John Michael Schmitz had his foot in a boot last week. Van Roten, who had only made one previous start at center in his NFL career back in 2022, was asked to make a start at center yesterday. He's practiced at center a lot through his career, but only his second ever pro start. And he played center. This against a defense that has the very dangerous, multiple-time Pro Bowler, DeForest Buckner, playing defensive tackle. I think the Giants, with the understanding going into the game, DeForest Buckner usually the right defensive tackle, which means he'd be in the A gap between the center and the left guard. I think that's why the Giants went into this game, and they decided to move Kubas to right guard, get him away from DeForest Buckner, who can wreck a game, and let Stinney, the veteran with some more experience, get more snaps against Buckner. I think that's what the Giants decided to do as they formulated their game plan. Big Blue, another super user hit from Big Blue, and a tremendous thank you. I love the way he spells it, too. You guys see this on the chat? You've been watching, right? You know Big Blue's one of our original guys. Big Blue, B-L-U, and he leaves the silent E off. Gotta love it. All right. Awesome. So here's the thing. The offensive line was stellar. All right? And that was a huge plus. And let's see. The final item that made this such an explosive offensive day for the Giants. And then there's one other factor I will get into, but it's not a Giants item. The timing of penalties. How many people out there who are watching this show right now have been able to count how many times the Giants have cost themselves a first down, a 10 or more yard gain, or for that matter, a touchdown because of a penalty? I'm not even going to go there. I don't want to get your calculators out and have you figuring it out. The bottom line is it's been happening all season long. What happened yesterday? The Giants were flagged for 4 offensive penalties yesterday. They didn't have anything on the special teams kickoff return for a touchdown, thank goodness, because you'll remember Smith-Morset had a return earlier this year taken back because of a penalty. 4 flags on the offense yesterday, and it only erased a total of 3 yards of offense. I tell people all the time, yes, you want to cut down on your penalties. 4 or 5 a game, coaches can digest that. Once you get to 6 and higher, it tends to rankle them a little bit. But it's not so much how many penalties, it's when. Once again, this unclutched team would usually commit penalties that would be in the most painful spots of the game that would cost them irreparable damage. Yesterday, 4 offensive penalties, and it only wiped out a 3-yard run by Tyrone Tracy. The other 3 penalties did not wipe out a play. They were pre-snap penalties and did not cost them any positive yardage. They didn't have to erase a play. Nothing's worse, right? You guys have all been to the games. You've all watched them on TV. You've listened to them on the radio. Nothing's worse than when you make a big play and all of a sudden, oh, there's a flag. Now you got to wait for the official. And then invariably with the Giants in 2024, you wind up hearing, oh, penalty, offense, replay the down, move them back. So that 23-yard pass play isn't just a 5-yard illegal motion. It's a 28-yard penalty. The 5 yards for the flag and the 23 yards that the officials just whited out. Well, they lost only 3 yards. 3 that were erased by officials yesterday. Put all those things together, some of which are incredibly simple and incredibly routine. I think outside of the kickoff return for a touchdown, which you're not going to see every week or even every year, outside of that, there's no other item that I just gave you that was superhuman. These were things that they should have been able to do most of the year. Relatively routine things that if you just had not continued to self-destruct, beat yourself, and give charity away. We've talked about this since earlier in the year. You could easily, minimum, 4 charity games this team had given away. Minimum of 4. You could even argue 5 if you'd want to. That's why I believe that this 3-13 record is not indicative of the roster or the team that the Giants have. Clean up just half of those routine things. And, of course, have a healthy kicker against Washington early in the season. And you'll see how close this team is to bouncing back in 2025. Now, of course, they've got to handle the quarterback situation, and that's another whole dilemma that we can get into if you guys want to talk about it. So those are the reasons the Giants themselves were able to do what they did yesterday. Now, there was one other factor that did help them. The Indianapolis Colts, as I mentioned on WFAN's Giants pregame show yesterday, they lead the NFL going into this past weekend in missed tackles. They had 141 missed tackles going into the game. I mean, 7-8 record with 141 missed tackles, nearly 10 a game. That's embarrassing. And quite honestly, some of that yak yardage that the Giants were able to compile came from missed tackles. There's no question about that. But I will say this. Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, and I would also say Malik Neighbors, the king of the yak yesterday. Those 3 guys ran with so much passion, gumption, and force that they were able to take advantage of the Colts' sloppiness and missed tackles. We all know that missed tackles are a problem in the NFL. They have been for years. Part of the ways that you become a better offense is that you take advantage of those missed tackles. The Giants haven't done much of that at all. But they did it against Indy. They made them pay for every missed tackle. So that also was a component of why the Giants' offense was so unbelievably efficient. But again, to some degree, even though that's a Colts problem, it still is something that the Giants affected and impacted because they took advantage of what the Colts were willing to give them by not necessarily wrapping up and knocking guys down. Okay. So that's basically my thoughts on the Colts game. Let's not forget there was a busted coverage for a touchdown. Joe Flacco did throw for over 300 yards. The Colts did gain over 400 yards. They were around 50% in third down conversions. Let's not forget any of that because that's not great, obviously. In fact, it's rather poor. And on most weekends, you're not going to win that way. But the offense, the Giants' offense won a track meet yesterday. Man, talk about finding a four-leaf clover in the middle of a field. That's what happened yesterday. And it wasn't all that hard to explain. And big thumbs up to Jonathan Taylor, by the way. Always enjoyed watching that guy play. He truly is one of the most underrated running backs of the last decade. I know. He's been beset by injuries, right? We know that story. You know, Barkley had some of that too when he was here. But Jonathan Taylor, well over 1,200 yards rushing this season. Came into the weekend 8th in the league. Remember, a few years ago, before he got hurt, he led the NFL with over 1,800 rushing yards. Now, they don't use him very much in the passing game. But man, he is impressive. So, Giants gave up, I think it was 120-something to Taylor on 30-something carries yesterday. Outside of the 120-plus yard run where he went in for a touchdown, that was his only big play run. But I don't want to ignore that. You know, that's when the defensive coaches are looking at that film this morning, undoubtedly they're talking to their players and saying, guys, I know it's amazing. The offense bailed you out, but let's make sure we understand that that defensive effort was not nearly good enough. So I don't want to sugarcoat in any way the fact that the Colts chewed up an awful lot of yardage and points against the Giants. This was not one of their better defensive performances of the season. You could argue it was one of their low points, but the offense was so ridiculously awesome that they were able to walk out with that 45-33 victory. All right. And by the way, big thumbs up to Dane Belton for a spectacular interception on the first series of the game. And obviously, Drew Phillips, who picked one off in the fourth quarter to help seal the deal. So that's where it's at. Oh, and also another young guy, defensive tackle Elijah Chapman. Yeah, on a 4th and 1, up the middle, against the aforementioned Jonathan Taylor, he stuffed him right at the line of scrimmage for no gain, and the Giants took over on downs. Could you imagine that? I was just talking to Elijah Chapman last week. I did a pregame interview for the Giants radio network, NFAN. And this kid is just so peachy, blessed, and happy to be here and doing what he's doing. And now he's going to be able to tell all his friends and family for years down the road, I stopped Jonathan Taylor on a 4th and 1 when he went right up the middle against me, met him head on, took his legs out. Wow. Pretty cool. A lot of fun stuff. In that locker room after the game, those guys were breathing a breath of fresh air. They needed it. They all worked so hard and desperately wanted to win, and they got what they wanted. And those of you who went to the game, and please, if there are any people out there who went to the game yesterday, call in. We got the ability. C-Web, I'm going to get to you in just a second. Call in, all right? Please do. Come at me with a video call. Come at me with an audio call. If you want to do a chat, do a chat. That's okay too. I want to know about your experience at the game, because I know there are a lot of empty seats. I get it. Giants' last home game of the year, and they finally ended their home skid and avoided becoming the second Giants team ever to lose its entire home schedule. You know, the 1974 Yale Bowl Giants. I get it. But in the final 5 and 6 minutes of that game, in the fourth quarter, you folks who were at the stadium, who did make the trek out to the building, man, you were rocking. You guys were pumped. You were treating this thing, like a holiday gift. And the players were feeding off of it, and they were feeding it back to you. And after the game, we saw Gano, we saw Neighbors, we saw Locke, I think Slayton, a bunch of Giants, after the game was over, went over to the front row of the stands. They were handing them pieces of equipment. They were signing autographs. It was a real enjoyable moment for those of you who came out to the stadium. And isn't that really what it's all about, right? For those of you who took the time and the effort to come out to the stadium yesterday, you went out there to have a good time. You got 50-something degree weather, sunny, pleasant, gorgeous day for the end of December, and you got to watch an explosive game with over 70 combined points, and the Giants put up a ridiculous 40 spot and win the game for you. And you got to cheer and yell and scream and walk out of the building saying, wow, that was really fun. It was like a pinball machine. Live in the present. Don't worry about what's going to happen 2, 3, 4, 5 months from now. Live in the present. You left your house yesterday. You went to the stadium. You put the effort in. You saw the players give you that effort because you paid for the tickets. You got to enjoy it firsthand. That's all you got to do. That's it. That's all you got to do. Hey, C-Web, let me bring you up here.
Hey, Peter, can you hear me?
How you doing, my man?
Oh, I'm fantastic. Like you were saying, you spend the time and the effort, and everybody works hard to make a decent living, and to be able to go and see a great product on the field yesterday was outstanding. I don't know if you saw me yesterday. I said, "Hey," from Coach's Club.
Was
as you were walking
that
down,
you?
and you said, "Happy Holidays."
Yeah,
That was me. Yeah,
that's very cool.
I know you're working. No worries. Trying to shake your hand, but all good. It was so nice to see you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and I do apologize. I try when I can take a moment, and I recognize someone yelling for me. I try to at least acknowledge when I can. You can imagine the focus that I have on the sideline. You could see it.
Absolutely. I
understand. I got my pad going. I got my notes going on every play. It's what I do, man. It's a labor of love.
You hit the nail on the head. Just being in that stadium yesterday and seeing the players have so much emotion, and these guys unfortunately had a lot of injuries and stuff going on with the team, but they still believe. They believe in the core of this unit. They know they're a young, feisty team, and whether or not fans want to get upset about the quarterback position or whatever it may be, guys want to go out and play. So I think it's going to be very interesting as they move forward into the offseason. Or I'm sorry, we have next week, but as we transition, it's going to be very interesting to see how we build off of these last 2 weeks.
Yeah, Drew Lock played the game of his career
Mhm.
yesterday. He was sensational. Now,
And as you know, Pete, these guys are auditioning for other teams or wherever
well,
or another deal.
they want to stay in the NFL. That's the
Right.
idea.
NFL stands for not for long, but a lot of these guys want contracts. So
I don't know. I don't know that Drew Lock has done enough for the Giants to offer him the chance to come back. I don't know that because prior, I thought he originally took a couple of baby steps forward and then he took a major step back in the Atlanta game,
mhm.
which we all know was just a very, very bad game. And he in
Right.
particular really had a rough night that day.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know that this erases that game for him. I don't know where it puts him in the Giants' minds. But my goodness, if you remember when they released Daniel Jones at his own request, and I said, folks, watch what's going to happen now with these guys who are going to get more snaps. They've got to put in the Giants' heads, the front office's heads, a value so that they know what do we got there.
Right.
And I said specifically, Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito, they need to prove that they're more than placeholders. And
Right.
neither guy, in my opinion, has put together a big enough body of high quality work necessarily to raise their level. If Drew Lock had done this for 3 or 4 games, I think we would all
You feel
say,
a
you
lot
know
better
what,
about him.
bring him back as a backup.
Right.
Yeah, but he didn't do that. He only did it yesterday, and it was a great game. But I just don't know how that will weigh on the Giants' scale when they view him in the offseason. Is he somebody they're going to want to talk to again? I don't know. I know he's a great teammate. They love him in the locker room. He's a great guy. He certainly has skills. He showed you that yesterday. But I don't know where he's going to stand. He's got one more game now this weekend against Philadelphia. Let's see what he does, and if he can polish up his name again, maybe that will make a difference. I don't know, but let me ask you something, C Webb. You were down there by the coaches club. You were right there behind the bench. I've talked all along about how badly these players want to win and how important it is and what the emotion is with these guys. Give everybody out there, you're not affiliated with the team as I am with the official broadcast team. I get that. And so a lot of times people think, well, Paul, you're a bit jaded. All right, if you
No,
want to feel that way, it's okay. I'm a paisan. I come at you. I'm face to face. I don't hide behind anything. I am as straight shooter as there's ever going to be. But
right.
don't take my word for it. Take C. Webb's word for it. He was behind the bench. Tell everybody about your experience and what you saw from those players.
Yeah, you had all those players clapping the other guys up, cheering, getting hype after making plays. Like the guys were amped up and wanted to win. Players go out to win games. Players play. And to sit here and think players want to sit down and lay down and have the same outlook that you want to have as a fan is just foolish. It's foolish. The number one pick to the players doesn't matter to them. That's not their contract. So
I couldn't agree with you more.
it's just, yeah, these guys are going out to execute a job, and they enjoy playing for the Giants. Still, they're still. I still think there's culture there. I don't think. I think the whole mystery of things saying Dable's lost the locker room. These guys are still playing hard for Brian Dable. I just think.
That's the other thing, C Web. I don't want to interrupt you, but I kind of do for a second because there was a narrative by one of the outlets, the media outlets, a few weeks
Mhm.
ago that there was friction, there was problems. Dable had lost the locker room. The guys weren't into it. That he had, the message was not getting through. Did you see any evidence of that?
The body language from the entire staff and the players looked good from what I saw. It looked like the players do trust the coaching, that they understand their assignments, and it seems like a good culture. I feel good at where we are right now, even though the unfortunate circumstance with the quarterback.
Yeah.
And I know people don't want to hear it. It's just patience. It's a slower climb than people think of getting to where we need to be. But who knows? Again, we could make a big jump next year. You don't know.
I'm
With
with you.
with what you were saying when it came to penalties in opportune times, being able to stop the run, and getting more production from the quarterback position.
I think it's
Drop
going to be,
passes. Yeah.
yeah, C. Webb, it's going to be very interesting. And I'd love your take on it because, you've been one of the regulars on the program, and I appreciate and respect your opinion and thoughts. I've told people that, there's nothing wrong if you don't believe that the value at franchise quarterback is there when you pick in the first round, you sign a bridge. It's okay to do that.
Conviction, absolutely. As long as Joe Shane and the team, they have conviction in the guy, fine. Do whatever you got to do. Go get your guy. But if they don't truly believe and have conviction, you have to pivot. There's not
Yep.
only one way, and I think that's a lot of the challenge with our fan base and other Giants fans. People think it's one way. There's 2 first-round quarterbacks. Whatever you got to do, go get those guys.
Right.
But at the end of the day, all these guys have jobs for a reason. They're out here to Joe Shane and his team is out here to evaluate talent. If they have conviction, they're going to go get them. If they don't, it's okay. There's another plan in place. You just have to be able to trust the plan, whatever it is, whether you agree or disagree, and let it play out. Let it play out.
They have a responsibility to themselves, to the players, the coaches, ownership, and the fan base. They have a responsibility that wherever their strongest conviction is, they've got to follow it. And if they think that there's a franchise quarterback on the board when they pick in the first round, they should take him. If they do not, well, then they should not take him. It's really very simple. It's not.
But Peter, what if I told you that they they trade up for a quarterback in the first round, and then Mason Graham may make this team better instead of a quarterback in the first round, and they trade for somebody? Are fans going to be upset if ultimately the team gets to where they need to be, even though it's not the most straight, direct route, or it's the route you think they should take?
There are times, I've used the Kerry Collins example a lot. He was on the scrap heap, out of the league. Nobody wanted him.
Mm-hmm.
And Ernie Accorsi, because of his Penn State connection with Joe Paterno, did the research, took a chance, and look what Kerry Collins did for the Giants. He was more than a bridge.
Right.
Geno Smith was signed as a bridge for Seattle. He wound up winning the job, and look what he's done. He's gone to 2 straight Pro Bowls.
Well, Peter, you could kind of shed some light here. When the Giants traded up for Eli and drafted Eli,
they used Kurt Warner.
The state of the roster was completely different than where we are right now.
Sure.
The team was in a Super Bowl 3 years before and was competing at a pretty high level, and then bottled him out the year before because of injuries.
Yep.
I think when you look at the team now, we haven't had that same success, and we're a lot younger, where I think a lot of fans are screaming for completely blow it up and start over again with a quarterback. So I think
the younger component, C-Web, is the important part. This is a much younger team than some of those other Giants teams that were at the crossroads. The youth is a very important part of it.
Right. So in your opinion, Pete, this team shouldn't be blown up. They should continue to kind of grow and build, correct?
Yeah, I look at Micah McFadden as the great example of what you want to do as a front office. You draft a guy, and 5th round pick, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shows flashes as a rookie. Now gets a bigger role in his second year, but still has some rough edges to clean up. Gets to his 3rd year, and now he's a bona fide, legitimate, quality NFL inside linebacker and a full-time starter.
Right.
And he's cleaned up and matured and gotten a lot better. He's reduced his missed tackles by like 50%.
Right.
That didn't come by accident.
But you can't expect everybody to be
progression that you want, I'm sorry.
You can't expect you can't expect every player to come in the league and have the production of Malik Neighbors at any position, because that's just not how the NFL works. It's nice. It would be nice if that was, but you're not going to get every pick come in and completely make a big impact and be a bona fide stud.
Right. Very few guys do that.
Right.
Carl Banks says you can't just add water.
and I think a lot of the frustration as well for fans is, I think most of it's derived offensively, where the team is not scoring points. Being at the stadium yesterday and seeing them put up 45 points, people were jumping for joy, excited. Even if the team was losing games, if they were scoring points consistently, the narrative around this team would be completely different.
Yeah. Yeah, because let's face it, points are exciting. Points kind of promote enthusiasm. And when you lose, and you lose ugly, and you lose boring, that just makes people down in the dumps.
And that's where all the hostility comes from.
All of that is justified. I truly believe all of the emotions that the fans are feeling from this string of really a lot of barren years over the last decade, all of that frustration and emotion is legit. It's being felt, it's being expressed, and it absolutely matches the situation that the team has been in. I have never resisted those feelings or those emotions. What I simply say is, look at what this team is. Remove emotion from the equation. Just look at the black and white facts of why they've lost as many games as they've lost. Look at what they have done to try to get back on their feet, and understand some of the circumstances that truly were out of their control that have sidetracked them. And when I look at all that stuff, and especially when I think about the coach, now look, I have no idea what ownership is going to do. Let me not BS my way through this, as some media people like to do and say they think they know what's going to happen. John Mara and the Tisch family, they don't even know. Okay? They haven't had their powwow yet. So I'm not going to sit here like some media person and say to you, I think I pretty much know what they're going to do, or they're headed toward this. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you flat out, I have not been upstairs. I don't have any business upstairs. That's not my jurisdiction. So I have no idea what the Giants are going to do. But one of my biggest tests, okay, one of my biggest tests for do I think a coach should have another shot is what you saw on that sideline yesterday. That passed the test. That checked a very big box for me, is that team is unified together. They're fighting. They're hungry. They're energized. They're enthusiastic, and they want to win. I've seen coaches who failed here who didn't have that. See, Webb, I'm on the sidelines. I know what happens down there.
Right.
Teams
You're
that
in the
are
locker rooms.
Yep. That's
right.
That's all I'm saying. Folks, digest that evidence. I get the record. The record brings emotions that make you want to ignore all the rest of the evidence. I understand that. It's hard sometimes to put the emotions aside. I totally get that. But you have to when you're making these decisions. That's why, to be frank with you,
you could be studying your growth.
I'm glad that I don't have to make those decisions, because sometimes it's hard for me to put my emotions aside.
But firing these guys could ultimately stunt the growth long term if you do fire them, because they could be ascending, and let's say Joe Schoen has another good draft class, and next thing you know, this team pops up and wins 9-10 games next year. Who knows? If they figure out the quarterback and players continue to develop, you never know. I think that's where the hard decision is. Don't.
How many people, when in 1983, when Bill Parcells, his rookie season as a head coach, they were 3-12-1. That was the first year that I covered the team. They had over 24 guys on injury reserve, and as you probably know, George Young talked to Howard Schnellenberger. I'm sure you've heard the story.
Mm-hmm.
And flirted with him to come be head coach of the Giants. Parcells had one shot at it, and he was 3-12-1, including picking the wrong quarterback. He picked Scott Bruner over Phil Simms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, what happened the following year? Nobody in New York City thought that Bill Parcells was, probably going to be the right guy for the job. And they probably would have applauded George Young had he made the change. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. That was miserable, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you were around, but it was bad.
I wasn't born yet, but.
Okay. But you know the story.
Yep.
Okay. So Parcells comes back the next year and says, hey, I'm doing this my way. And one of the things that they did was they cleaned out a lot of dead wood in the locker room. I know because I was there. They cleaned out a lot of dead wood. They got guys in there who were hungry, wanted to work hard, and believed in the team concept. Parcells picked Phil Simms to be his guy. In the offseason, they traded Scott Bruner to the Denver Broncos and said to Phil, it's your ball. Let's go. And they made the playoffs the following season. From 3-12-1, they went to 9-7 and made the playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it hard to thread that needle? Sure it is. I'm not saying it's not. It's hard. But I think the overall quality and youth and potential of this roster with the right tweaks in this offseason, and they're going to need a handful of them. All right? They're going to need a handful of them. And the quarterback thing isn't a tweak. That's a big deal. That's why I would sign a bridge quarterback, a veteran who has won games in this league before. Okay? I'm not looking to throw a rookie. I don't care who they draft. If they draft one, that rookie should not start week 1 in September next year.
Go do both. Go draft a guy and go get a veteran.
That's it. Let Kurt Warner 2.0 start while the quarterback that you may or may not draft sits on the bench, and get the team back to sea level. Get them back to respectability, and then worry about where you go from there. That's the way to go.
Totally agree.
In March, C-Web, you got free agency. I think we're going to know a lot about what the Giants are going to do with the quarterback situation in the draft by what they do with free agency.
We supplement. We should be supplementing through free agency and building in the draft.
Right, but with the quarterback spot, it's a little different. Okay?
Agree.
Yes, you want to build through the draft, no question. But with the quarterback spot, being that that's their Achilles right now, with a team that they believe can compete, the free agent, the bridge quarterback, in my opinion, if they decide to go this route, that's the more critical selection than even the quarterback that they may draft in April. Because the draft gurus, are you familiar with Kyle Krabs? He's one of the really good draft gurus who does draft stuff. He's very good.
Breakdown. Yep.
Okay. He just had a tweet earlier today. The 2026 quarterback class is looking dynamite. So if you decide not to take one this year, it's okay. If you got the right bridge that can get you 7 or 8 or 9 wins, go get that guy in March.
As long as they hit in 2026, fine. Just have conviction. Like I was saying before, Pete, just have conviction and be right. If they're wrong, then you look like Boo Boo the Fool, and the fans want to come to 1925 Giants Drive and rip your head off.
See, Webb, here's the problem, right? The only thing that's ever perfect is hindsight.
Right. Right. Spot on, my man.
My friend, always great to talk to you. I'm so glad you joined the program tonight. Be well. Happy New Year.
You too. Happy New Year, Paul. Thanks so much for all you do.
All right. Be good.
Take care.
Always good to talk to C-Web. I appreciate him coming in on the program. All right. So now let's see. We got a whole string of chats to get to. And again, folks, if you want to get in on a video call or an audio call, there's the link right there at the bottom of the screen. and I'll be very glad to take your call. I'm specifically interested in anybody who was at the game yesterday. I just think that would be great to hear from you guys, because people are skeptical sometimes when the host talks about something. You tell me about your experience at the game. Tell me why that place was so energized in the fourth quarter. Because the people were having a good time, the players were enjoying winning the game. That's what I think. But tell me what you think. All right. We have Eric Campan says it was terrible to be honest. It was terrible to see, to be honest, too. Little too late. Too little too late. Eric, I understand that. I do. Here's the thing. And I go back to what I said to you earlier. They gave away so many games to charity in the first half of the season that you knew, at least I knew, when they got to the midpoint of the year, if the snowball had started rolling downhill, that injury clause was going to come into play. Everybody knew that. This is not a secret now. I'm not letting anything out. Everybody knew that was going to come into play. And then Daniel Jones was not going to be the quarterback anymore. And I don't care how anybody else feels. You're entitled to your opinion. In my opinion, the best chance that the Giants had to have a respectable season this year would have been for Daniel Jones to play out the full season. He had a terrific first month, and the team just did not. I know the Minnesota game opening day was terrible for everybody, but right after that, he played well. And they were dropping passes, committing penalties, and doing everything they could to self-destruct. And then he ran into a 3-week stretch where he wasn't playing so well again. And by that point, the snowball was already halfway down the hill. They were getting to the midpoint of the season, and now it was too late. There was just no way to pull this big, huge snowball back up to the top of the hill. And the inevitable happened. Because of the injury clause, the inevitable happened. Okay, that's it. The move has to be made. And now what are you left with? You're putting Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito, backups to begin with, in an ultra difficult spot where you now just have to look for an evaluation process going in to 2025. That's what it became. How many of these guys can help you win games and show you that they should be part of the off-season program going into 2025? That's the only thing that mattered once Jones was released. How many of these guys can help you win games either now or going forward? Because it was going to be virtually impossible once that move was made for the Giants to climb out of what was a very deep canyon. So I get it, Eric. Yes. Ultimately, yes. Too little, too late. But nonetheless, a fun day when you live in the present yesterday for those people who played, coached, and were in attendance at the stadium. I do understand. Now, the evaluation process on all of these players, especially the younger guys, continues next week in Philadelphia. No matter who plays, whether or not Saquon Barkley does try to go for Eric Dickerson's rushing record or doesn't, or any of the other starters play or don't play, it's still another piece of tape that every one of these guys who wants to remain NFL players, starters or otherwise, need to show out. They do. It's that simple. And what I said on yesterday's WFAN Giants postgame show is not just 100% true, but it's 150% true. Pro personnel scouts have their people looking around the league, and they look at some of these teams that are also Rams, that are down at the bottom of the pile, record-wise. And they look and they think about who they can poach during the offseason. And if those guys quit, if any of those players quit and don't put out and don't look like they can be part of a winning ball game, not only will they not have a job with their current team, in this case, the Giants, word's going to get around the league that that guy is not a winning player. Look how he gave up. He was not a quality pro. That's not a guy that we want on our roster, in our lineup, or in our locker room. So every one of those players has a massive responsibility to do everything they can, not just for themselves and their teammates and, the Giants fans who are paying to see a legit product on the field, but they're also playing for their future. All right. Eric says, Happy New Year. Happy New Year back to you, Eric, and everybody out there in Webland. He says, also says, just feels like we are on a perpetual loop of mismanagement or bad luck. That win will cost us huge. Well, let me ask you something, Eric. I remember how vocal so many people were about the, quote, Chase Young game some years ago. Oh, the Giants beat Washington. They lost out on the number one pick. They're not going to get Chase Young. That's going to destroy the franchise. Well, let's see. Washington took Chase Young. He battled injuries and wound up off the team and has done nothing to live up to his hype and potential. The Giants took Andrew Thomas. Yes, he's been injured. Yes, he has not been as consistent as they'd like, but he did enough to make second-team All-Pro and to earn a contract extension. Is still part of the team, and the Giants believe he will continue to be part of the team moving forward. So, if you really want to look at facts, this is a very similar situation according to many media and fans out there. The Giants beat Washington, hurt their draft position, and yet you could make a very strong argument that today Andrew Thomas is more valuable than Chase Young, and certainly to the original organization that drafted him. I just feel compelled to talk about facts, folks. I'm sorry if you don't like them. Everyone can have an opinion, but facts are truth. Let's see here. Walter says, Paul, this is the second time he has had a big run back. The other was erased after a penalty. Yes, talking about Smith-Marset. You're absolutely correct. And that's why I'm telling you, this has been an unclutch football team. That's the kind of stuff that has happened to cause the record that they have. Just clean up some of the basics and look at what you got. Not only a win, but a fun win, an impressive win. I get it, man. I get it. So yes, Walter, I think Smith-Marset has earned his keep. There's no question about that. For me, I think he's earned his keep, and I'd like to see the Giants bring him back. That's one of the young guys in the second half of the season who has clearly enhanced his name. There is some more value on this guy than when he first walked into the facility. There's no question about it. Christine says, so happy to be with you tonight. We win. So proud of these guys who played competitively and with all heart. No argument there, Christine. That was a fun game for all who were in the building. Well, not the Colts. I get it. They needed to win to keep their very thin playoff hopes alive, which, as it turned out, wouldn't have made any difference anyway. Big Blue, I know I'm way behind on getting to these chats because we had so much other stuff to talk about. Big Blue says, good evening, Paul. You play to win the game. So you're actually Herman Edwards in disguise, right? How about that? You won the turnover battle. As I said last week, Banks, in my opinion, disappointing. How about that block on the kickoff return touchdown? All right. Here's what I will say about Tay Banks. I had a talk with him last week, and he's been getting called lately, been too handsy, which he was at the University of Maryland. That was the one potential knock on him. Too physical, too handsy. And he was going to have to clean that up when he got here. Now, again, he's in a different kind of system and scheme than he was last year. He's had a devil of a time adjusting to it, and it has absolutely hampered him. And there have been a number of games where he has not been able to really show his skill set because he's gotten all clogged and bogged down with this stuff. In Atlanta, he had two terrific passes defended, or defensed is really the some people call it passes defensed, others call it passes defended. He had two dynamite pass breakups. PBUs is another term that they often use. He also had a pass interference penalty. Now, yesterday, he had two pass interference penalties. The first one, absolutely. The second one, there was so much hand fighting going on between him and the receiver. Jonathan Casillas sits next to me in the press box, and he said to me, are you serious? How do they call that? You got both the receiver and the DB are going at each other. You got to go no call. But they nailed him. Okay, probably in part because he's got a reputation of being a handsy guy. So in talking to Tay about it, he's trying to get picks. He knows that the Giants have been short on turnovers, and the coaches have been stressing, we got to get some turnovers. So in Atlanta, when I asked him about the one deep post that he got called to pass interference on, I said, hey, it looked like you were in really good position. And then you got handsy and you got called for the penalty. I said, you definitely got too physical. He said, I know. He said, I got too aggressive and I went for the interception. And his focus was he wanted the pick. He was going to go get that ball, and he got careless and wound up committing pass interference. No defensive pass interference is acceptable. Let me make that clear. And again, I love when people take everything that I say out of context, and there's a bunch of you out there that do. But there's also a bunch of you that are willing to actually listen to the whole statement and thought. Defensive pass interference is a miserable penalty to get. First down, spot of the foul, can change momentum, can result in a scoring opportunity. It's a terrible penalty. There's no question about that. Terrible penalty. But I can deal with a defensive back who tries to make an overly aggressive play to create a turnover. I can deal with that a lot better than a guy who is just flat out beat and then intentionally makes the penalty because he's afraid he's going to get beat for a touchdown. There is a difference from a coach's perspective in the type of penalty or the type of action that the player did that caused the penalty flag to be thrown. If there are any coaches out there watching the program, by all means, chime in, because that's how coaches look at it. Some will also say, and they'll be very stubborn about it, don't do anything that can be even considered a penalty because you're going to get flagged for it and it's too dangerous. There'll be some coaches who feel that way, and I do understand that. That does happen. But there are also, quote, understandable penalties that some guys will get flagged for. And then, quite frankly, there's also some mistakes that the officials make. I still have tremendous confidence in Tay Banks to be a high-level corner in this league. His cover skills, his energy, his ability to blend in with teammates. I very much believe that when you see him next year in year number 3, you're going to see a jump. And, we'll see what kind of scheme the Giants are going to play. We don't know if there are going to be tweaks to the scheme, full-fledged changes in the scheme. We don't know how much of the coaching staff may stay or may not stay, again, or what changes they will make. I feel very confident that Tay Banks is going to be a much better player in year 3 and give you more of a show of his best work as opposed to some of what he has put on tape this season. There's too much good in his game to let it all wash away after just 2 years in the league. Okay. Christine also chimes in on top of Big Blue coming back with that block was awesome on the return. Yes, I'm aware. Okay. Let's see. What do we have here? We have Justin says, we all know what happened. The team sent the franchise back 5 years. He piggybacks that off an earlier comment. That win was the worst loss I've seen by the Giants, and I've been a fan since 85. Okay. So my story about 1983 predated you, so you don't understand necessarily how quickly the rebuild occurred under Bill Parcells and how the rebuild could quickly be occurring this time as well. It may or may not happen that way, but there is certainly a precedent for it and something that has been accomplished before, and therefore you cannot ignore that possibility. So, Justin, I appreciate your viewpoint. I happen to disagree with you, and I think the most important thing that the Giants need to do is identify what they believe is worth saving on this roster and move forward. It is my thought, as I say, you get a bridge quarterback who has experienced winning in this league before. That will be a significant step in my mind into getting them onto respectability back in 2025 as quickly as possible. Look what Russell Wilson has done for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're no longer just a playoff team now. They're a contender. Look what Geno Smith did with Seattle the last couple of years. Look what Baker Mayfield has now done for Tampa Bay after they thought he might be a bridge when Tom Brady left. Look what Joe Flacco did when he came in off the couch for the Cleveland Browns last year and got them to the playoffs. Gardner Minshew. There's another guy within the last couple of years. Won a bunch of games in this league where no one even gave him a second thought. Nick Foles, for goodness sakes, was another guy who, my goodness, nobody thought when he came back to Philadelphia for his second stint that he was going to, do anything for them. There are going to be veteran free agent quarterbacks available after this season. There's going to be a shelf of them. The key is picking out the right ones because there's going to be, look at Sam Darnold in Minnesota this year, literally off the blacklist to having a tremendous season for a Super Bowl contender. There's going to be at least one, who knows, maybe 2 or 3 bridge quarterbacks this offseason that are going to do really, really well in 2025 and help a team win games out of nowhere. I personally believe that would be a very, very big step for any team in the Giants situation to get back to a respectable level again, record-wise. All right, what else do we have here? Aiden Fink says, we talked about Neighbors not looking the same since came back from injury a few weeks ago and love what he did. Looked explosive and looked like Chase out there. I don't want to go quite that far, okay? Jamar Chase is a proven time and time again premier receiver in this league. Aiden Fink says, love that he's not having drops. You know, the arrow's pointed up, right? The arrow's pointing up. And right now, that's all you can ask for. Because we know the season's lost. All you can ask for from any of these individual players now is to play their guts out, do everything they can to put winning caliber football on the field so that they can prove to you with their tape that they're worthy of being around in the offseason and opening day in 2025. Christine says, Neighbors has grown so much in the last month. His press speech was awesome. Oh, his media availability after the game. Yeah, for sure. He's honest. He's honest. He's telling you flat out. You know, he's getting asked just like all the other players are about draft picks and about winning games or not winning games and, you know, what's good, what's not good. You know, what do you think about the draft? He's getting those questions too. And he's like, I got to win games, man. I'm out here to play. I'm a dog. I got to be a leader. You guys have seen him on the post-game show. You've listened to him on the post-game radio. The dude doesn't want to lose. And he's playing through a painful hip and a painful toe. And he's putting out a product. I give him a lot of credit. He's definitely earned some points during this final month of the season. No question about it. All right, let's see here. We go down. Well, Justin's got another comment here. Much love to you and P. Train. That's Patty Trainer of the New York Giants on SI. She's the managing editor of that site, of which we are a part of. Could be more pessimistic about the future of the team than I am now while we are on the outside looking in for a quarterback again, Justin. I'm not going to waste any more time going through this all over again. I've already explained it multiple times. You can catch me on this program anytime to go through it. I've gone through it on BBKL, Big Blue Kickoff Live. I even went through it a little bit on the postgame show on the radio yesterday after the game was over. There will be, if you want a quicker turnaround than waiting for a rookie who we all know rookie quarterbacks most of the time, and especially in a year where the rookie class is not overwhelmingly thought to be just add water. A bridge quarterback is your best chance to turn things around quickly. There's C. Webb. There he is, Christopher Webb. There he is now on the side. Very nice. The man, the myth. Some people probably have a few other words in there, Christopher, but that's okay too. I don't mind. It is what it is. I just do what I do. Nice to see you yesterday at the game as well, and Happy New Year. And again, thanks for calling in on the chat, on the audio call earlier before. Let's see. Let's see. What else do we have here? Aiden Fink says, Paul, I might be the only one part of Gen Z that doesn't want the Giants to tank. Well, Aiden, here's the thing. I go back to what I said earlier. There are so many angles to the business of pro football and the game of pro football. And if you only look at it from one angle, you strictly look at the one loss record and you don't think of the injuries, the salary cap, the chemistry, the locker room building, what's being done on the practice field, how much effort's being put into it. There are so many different angles to the prism that make up a winning football team. And if someone just looks at the one loss record, and I've said this before, and I'm going to say it a billion more times in my career, I disagree with Coach Parcells, who said you are what your record says you are. The only time that holds true is when the NFL decides who gets to go to the postseason and who doesn't. That's when that statement is true. But you've got a slew of 3 and 4 win teams in this league right now. 2 handfuls of them. And I guarantee you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that all of those teams are not exactly on the same level. There are some that are higher than this and some that are lower than down here. Okay? All of these teams are not equal. They don't all have the same salary cap status. They don't all have the same needs on their roster. They don't have the same needs on their depth chart. They don't have the same needs on their coaching staff. They don't have the same needs in their starting lineup. They won't have the same draft pick spots. They won't have the same contractual status of their better players. Now, of course, when Bill said that goes back many years, a couple of decades ago, and the business has changed. I still think Bill probably would adhere to that because it was one of his core beliefs. But no, it's really not the case anymore. It's just not. Maybe at one time you could make that case better than you can now. But if you either unpeel all the layers of the onion, you will see how different all of these teams that are winning 3 and 4 games so far, you will see how different they truly are. Or if you prefer the prism analogy, look at all of the different angles and fractions of the prism, and you will notice how different these teams really are. The Dallas Cowboys are in salary cap hell with a capital H. They've got a quarterback who constantly gets hurt and is dramatically overpaid in Dak Prescott. What exactly has he ever done to deserve the deal that he got? And he can't even finish the season this year. They got a big problem. They have an overpaid, injured quarterback who hasn't produced to the level of that deal in any way, shape, or form. And they're stuck with him. They got to move forward with that. That's an albatross. How's that good? At least if you're the Giants, you've got to have a much cleaner slate to now try to find somebody who has a much bigger upside. It's the way it is. Anyway, Aiden, I appreciate the comment. And I don't know if it's about being Generation Z or Generation X or Generation Y. I don't know if it's about that. I think it's about understanding the multiple layers of the onion or the multiple angles of the prism. And I think it's also about understanding that once you see all of that stuff, you can take the emotion out of it and say, all right, where does this team stand? Where do they want to go? What do they have to do? And how do they get there? As opposed to just the emotion, which will drive anybody to be angry, upset, disappointed, disgusted. That does no good. I'll tell you something, Aiden. I think I was thinking about this the other day, and I guess I'll bring it out now. Here's the analogy, right? Here's the analogy. You're a doctor and you work in the operating room at a major metropolitan area hospital. Okay? And you're having a bad day. But you know that because you work in the emergency room of a major metropolitan area hospital, you're going to have a bunch of patients who are in really bad shape. That's just a fact. There's probably going to be a handful of them that come in tonight on this very shift. Now, if you want to get all emotional and wrapped up in your own problems, and you see a patient come in and he's just got a bunch of stuff that's not going well, and you're going to get all emotional and angry about it, and like, oh, I don't know what we're going to do with this guy. What's the odds of saving the patient? Probably not very good. The best doctor is going to put his personal stuff behind, look at it logically and say, okay, what do we have here, nurse? What do we have here? Well, doctor, we got this, this, and this. This is okay, fine. Set up room 425B. I need this, 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 and this. Let's go. And that's what the best doctors will do. They will then go. They will be methodical. They will have a complete understanding of what they're dealing with. And they will now surgically, without emotion, because they can't have emotion when they're doing their job, do what they have to do to help that patient get better and recover. Now, I don't mean to compare football to life and death. That's not the point of this analogy. And if that's what you're taking away from it, then you're taking my analogy out of context and you're missing the entire point. The point that I'm making is about the approach, the mentality, and the attitude that one must have when removing emotion and just getting down to the nuts and bolts and figuring out, okay, what here is okay and what do I need to do to try to make it better? That's the way a football team has to work and operate. They can't look at the one-loss record, be disgusted, aggravated, sickened by it, and just start screaming to the sky saying, ah! Does nobody any good to complain, pound one's fist on the table and say, I've had a bad day, my patient's a mess, and that's it. I just throw my hands up and tell that patient to go somewhere else because I'm not going to help him. Pointless. Aiden, I appreciate it. You got me on a soapbox a little bit. I've been doing this for 42 years. I've been to the Giants 5 Super Bowls. They won 4 of them. I've been to many playoffs games with them, many playoff seasons. I've also been through many losing seasons with them, as well as horrific ones. I understand how this works. All right, let's see what else we have here. Let's see. Guys talking about the turnovers. I've already gotten to that. Yeah, I'm so far behind on these. My goodness, I'm over an hour behind on some of these chats. So let me get back here. Yeah, Christopher Webb, see Webby again. He's right. Got to be better at stopping the run. There's no doubt about that. One of the Giants' offseason needs is going to have to be a absolutely physical, dominant, brutal force of a defensive tackle who they can pair with Dexter Lawrence and basically be like a couple of steam-sniffling, raging bulls along that defensive line of scrimmage and say, go ahead, try to run the ball up the middle against us. Now, I know you're going to say, but Paulie Dot, Giants are giving up too many runs off the edges. Okay, well, that's also part of where they've got to get their own guys to play better too. Remember, it's a lot easier to run straight ahead than it is to go wide. So the Giants need to get that straight ahead stuff squared away first. Get a real bruiser to pair with Dexter Lawrence in the middle. Get that. Get that defensive line beefed up. Leonard Williams was outstanding. Big Cat was one hell of a player. I told you guys when they got him in the trade from the Jets, you'd love him. They would use him properly, and he would be a really good player. And he was. And the Seattle Seahawks are thrilled to have him now. They need another one of those kinds of guys. And I hope that they can get one of those in the draft this year. My understanding is that the defensive line is very thick in the upcoming draft in April. So that would be really good news. All right. Let's see here. Let me go back down here. Let me see. Yeah, Christine says, we need so much on defense, like depth, no question. Love the rookies and undrafted free agents. The Giants have 2 undrafted rookie free agents on this team. That would be Elijah Chapman, the defensive tackle, and offensive guard Jake Kubas. Those are the 2 guys that made the team out of August in training camp and have stuck with the squad the entire year. And you have to consider those guys part of the rookie class. It's often talked about when teams grade or people love to grade a draft class. Well, most people forget that an undrafted rookie free agent is part of that rookie class. It's really part of the draft class, if you will, because they've got to negotiate independently against every other team in the league when a guy doesn't get drafted and convince that guy to come to their team. If anything, it's harder to do that than it is, to make a pick. Because the board's there, you want that guy, you take that guy. But the scramble and the competition for an undrafted rookie free agent at the end of the draft, man, that takes a lot of doing. The Giants got one last year with Bryce Ford Wheaton, who has turned out to be a terrific special teams player. And this year, they've got Elijah Chapman and Jay Kubas. And I don't know. I can't say for sure. Okay, I can't say for sure what the future is going to be for those 2 guys. But what I can say is, when you look at the Giants draft class this year, you don't just look at the guys they took in their rounds and their picks. You add the 2 undrafted free agent rookies to that class too. And all of these guys have contributed. That's the undrafted rookie free agent scramble is really the 8th round of the draft. That's how player personnel guys look at it. That's the bonus round. That's the extra round of the draft. It's round 8, which is not covered on TV. I mean, who wants that, right? How are you going to do it anyway? So it's always forgotten about, but it's unofficially round 8. So the Giants not only have done a terrific job with their picks this past April, but they've also picked up 2 additional bonus guys in round 8. Just another positive from this front office that we're talking about. Christine says she loves Chapman. I understand. Look, he's not an all-pro. I still think he'll be a rotational player. but he deserves to be on an NFL roster. There's no question about that. I don't think he's a full-time starter, and I'm not sure if he can get there. But he certainly deserves to be in this league. And I'm sure that the Giants have plans to have him in 2025. Scott Young says, listen to a lot of the interviews. You could hear the excitement in the locker room in the background. Well, that would be after the game, I'm assuming. You're talking about after they beat the Colts yesterday. There was no question about it. Look, you don't want to become part of history in a negative way. It's bad enough that they lost the franchise record 10 consecutive games. That's bad enough. But you don't want to be remembered and put in the company as the 1974 New York Giants Yale Bowl team that went the entire season without a home victory. You don't want to be in that company. So winning that game yesterday now eliminates them from having to share that dubious distinction. And for every player and coach who's ever been in the NFL, or even in college or in high school, who bleeds, sweats, cries, and hurts throughout the course of their season and throughout the course of practices and all that they go through, the sacrifices and the pain, the reward of a victory on game day, man, that's a big deal to them. They're competitors. You can't understand what it means to guys to go out there, perform their craft, and then leave the field knowing that they won that day. They were the better guys that day. That's a very, very big deal. So yes, the locker room was very celebratory yesterday. Not artificial and not like, oh, great, this team made the playoffs. No, nobody was fooling themselves. Nobody was kidding themselves. Nobody is happy with the season. And you heard each and every week how unhappy the players and the coaches were after every loss. So you already heard all of that. So you know that's genuine. But there was also genuine satisfaction in finally being able to turn it around and stop the bleeding. And they deserved that moment, those guys did yesterday after the game. Okay, how about this one? Cameron Powell. I don't know if you were at the game or not, Cameron, but he says, the win made me happy. I can care less about draft position. As has been said many times, you got to live in the present. Mike Kafka, in particular, this offensive coordinator on this current Giants team, he says that a lot. Coach Dable also does refer to that a lot. Living in the present. There's a lot of stuff about tomorrow that you can't control. And there's a lot of stuff that will happen that will push your hand or force your hand or create even more variables than you can even imagine. But what you do know for sure is living in the present and what you are doing today and what you are doing right now. And the feel-good feelings that came out of that stadium yesterday were legit. And that's what Cameron's talking about. And I can appreciate the sentiment. Oh, Christine, I'm so sorry. She says, my health caused my husband to give up our season tickets. I would love to be there. Oh, geez, Christine, I'm sorry to hear that. I do hope that you're feeling better and that you are in the upswing and have a much healthier and happier 2025 for sure. Can't wish you that enough. And I know everybody as part of our viewing audience out there wishes the same. I will tell you that, it's great to see the camaraderie of the fans when the team wins, because everybody seems to relish in it and enhance the enjoyment of the experience. And that's why, let's face it, 2022 was an awful lot of fun for anybody who was in that atmosphere because it was unexpected. They won 9 games. They went to the playoffs, and then they won a road playoff game against a highly seeded team. That was an extremely fun experience for anybody who was along for that ride. All right. Let's see here. Rocky Fresh says, we did the same thing last. Misses out on Jaden Daniels. Now look at Commanders. He turned their whole team around. Well, here's the thing, Rocky. Daniels was not available to the Giants at the time that they picked. They picked the guy who they thought would provide the most value at the time they were on the board. They thought that the explosive wide receiver was going to add another dimension to the squad, and that, of course, the other routine elements would be enough to allow them to rise the tide and lift all the boats. Hindsight's 2020. Hindsight is never wrong. And with the circumstances that developed, it did not work out well in terms of the bottom line, the one-loss record, and the results. I get it. Obviously, Washington is very, very happy with what they have, at least this year. I think, as was the case when RG3 went to Washington many years ago and he won the Rookie of the Year award, his style of play and his body wound up getting beaten up very quickly. And within a couple of years, as he continued to try to go out there and do what he did and even aggressively tried to go out maybe a little too soon one time, he wound up getting hurt a number of times, and it derailed his career. I don't know about Jaden Daniels 5-10 years from now. I stand by what I said going into the draft. My 2 favorite quarterbacks in this draft were Drake May and Bo Nix. I was very clear about that. It's only 1 year in. Daniels has been very successful. Caleb Williams, somewhat successful, I suppose. I was not a big proponent. Michael Penix, I was not a big proponent, but he really hasn't gotten much of a chance in Atlanta so far. Very limited playing time. But, yeah, people up in New England are telling me they're very happy with Drake May. They believe they've got their franchise quarterback. And the people in Denver believe they've got their franchise quarterback in Bo Nix. Doesn't surprise me at all. Now, what's going to happen 3, 4, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? We'll see how it all plays out. I don't know ultimately if what we've seen this year will be how it plays out every year down the road. I don't know that. You don't know that. Nobody knows that. But I'm still going to hang my hat on Drake May and Bo Nix being the 2 best quarterbacks in this draft by the time it's all said and done. I said it in March. I'm still saying it now. I can't walk away from it. I'm not going to second guess myself. And to be fully honest and transparent with you people, which is what I will always be, I'm not going to change things and go have a revisionist history. That I will never do here. Never. When I have conviction about something, because I do try to process things as best as I can with what I do know, I will have conviction and I will tell you flat out, That's the way I feel. And I will never back down from that. And if I was right, as in the case of Drake May and Bo Nix, great. If I was wrong, I didn't think Jaden Daniels was going to be a long-term answer. We'll find out. We'll find out in a few years if he's going to have the same fate as RG3 or if he winds up perhaps becoming another Russell Wilson. We will know. We will know. I was not a big Russell Wilson proponent when he came out. Came out in the draft, was not a big proponent. Thought he was a system quarterback, thought he ran around too much, thought it was going to cost him his durability. And look what happened. Russell Wilson turned himself into a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. We all make misses. We all have hits and we all have misses. That's a fact. I love though the people who always want to point out your misses and always conveniently have amnesia and never remember about your hits. That's always funny because they can't accurately come back to you with a batting average because they only remember your misses. They don't remember your hits. Like when I said Josh Allen was by far the best quarterback in his draft, and I wasn't a fan of any other QB in that draft. Josh Allen was the guy. That's a great hit. Not too many people thought that, but yeah. I've picked out some real good ones over the years. I've also picked out some guys that weren't so great, but that's the way it is with everybody. Heck, if I could pick out a great one every time, then there would be teams trying to hire me as a GM, and I'd have to tell them no, because I don't want that kind of pressure. All right. John Morano says, Happy New Year, Paul. And a big Happy New Year to you, John. Always love hearing from you. I was there. It was like old times. Forget the record. Don't care about the draft. We won. John, I think there were a bunch of people in that stadium yesterday who shared your exact sentiments. Let's keep going down here. Okay, Scott Young says, I hate the fact that people are so upset the Giants won yesterday. It bothers me so much to hear everybody complain about the win. What happened to people when it comes to sports? Well, Scott, here's the problem that we have today. And Christine says, I totally agree with Scott Young. Okay. Here's the problem. We have a very serious issue really in today's world where, especially in sports, right? Sports are very emotional for fans. That's what drives fans to become what they are. That's why they attach themselves to certain players and certain teams, because they are thirsting for positive emotions from what their players and their teams do. So when they don't get the positive emotion back from those players or those teams, the emotions immediately turn into anti-emotion. They become, instead of a positive, they become a negative. And those emotions consume the fan. And then what happens? They start thinking with their emotions and they become angry and disappointed and frustrated. And then they just start thinking all kinds of things. That's the way it works. And I understand that. My goodness, before I got into this business and I grew up as a fan of teams, you know, in my youth and middle school and high school and college, I understood all of that stuff. I get it. That's why I sympathize with people who allow their emotions to overcome their thought processes, because that's what fans do. So all I could tell you, Scott, is that, you know, once I got into the business, I understood that if I'm going to be a conduit fans are the reason that I do what I do, right? If fans didn't care and have interest and want knowledge and education and analysis about their players and their teams, there'd be no reason to have people who cover the teams. So I'm very grateful for that. But my job has got to be, okay, guys, let's take the emotion out of it. And let's try to tell you what the bare bones are here, what you got without the emotion. This, because I get that you're filled with emotion. I'm going to say, let's step away from the emotion and let's see what you got. Let's see what's worth salvaging. Let's see what's worth adding. Let's see if you can add. Let's see what makes sense. Let's see what the options are. And really, that's what it comes down to. And folks who get overcome with emotion are usually either so flooded with emotion that they'll just opine a certain way and ignore the layers of the onion, or they'll ignore the facets of the prism because the emotion just takes over. And that's nobody's fault. Again, that's why fans root for their teams and their players, because they want to thrive on emotion. So it's nobody's fault. So, Scott, don't hate. Please don't, because that's a terrible emotion. Don't hate that people feel that way. They probably can't help themselves because emotion has overcome what it is to just be a fan. But I do appreciate the fact that you can sort through that and just try to be as a matter of fact as possible. Look, again, nothing makes things better for a fan than to have their players do well or their team win. Nothing. So why not just live in the present and watch your players do well and watch your team win? That just seems pretty logical. But again, if people want to just ride on their emotions, they're certainly entitled to do so. I understand it. I don't roll that way, but I understand it. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have here? We have Scott saying about the smiles, all the faces of the people and on the sideline and with the players and the coaches. Nice to see. Okay. Christine says it was awesome. Christine says, patient is a happy ending. Well, you'd like to think so. Scott says, I don't want to make no changes on this staff. I really don't. Let's keep the coach, GM. Let's move forward till next season. I understand. There's a case to be made for that. And there's a case to be made if you just simply look at the one-loss record and allow emotion to rule. There's a case to be made on the other side. The question is, how do you weigh all of the factors, right? We could all agree to disagree on the final result, because you need to determine in your own head when you formulate your opinion, and the Giants ownership is going to have to do this. They get paid to do this. The front office staff and the ownership, they get paid to do it. I don't. But the equation is simple. They have to say, okay, what are the positives and how many pounds do those positives weigh? What are the negatives? How many pounds do those negatives weigh? They put it on a scale, and that's how they figure it out. The scale is not one-sided. It's not 5,000 pounds on this side and 0 pounds on the other. It is not. And vice versa. It's not 0 pounds on this side and 5,000 on this. It is not. There is weight on both sides of the scale. Ownership and management will decide where that scale tips and how much weight is on each side of it. That's their call. Nobody else's. Christine just says, I meant above patience, give them more time. Okay. Well, we're 2 hours in. We have nearly 700 people right now live on the program. I'm probably going to shut it down unless we get a couple of calls or video calls here, because we're running out of chats. And there's no reason to go much longer. We've done 2 hours for you tonight, but let's see. Let's see if somebody else has something they want to chime in about. Let's see. Christine, that's awfully kind. You say you're what I look forward to during tough times. Look, I'm just trying to bring you guys information and perspective. That's all. That's what I'm here to do. And I appreciate that you want to interact about it and that you want to have some productive conversations about it. Because that's really the only reason to do this. All right. Scott Young says here, everyone thinks by getting a quarterback with the first pick, it's automatically going to be success. Not true. Go look around the league. A lot of first-round quarterbacks not even playing anymore. Scott, I did a significant amount of research last spring when there were a lot of folks who wanted to draft a first-round quarterback. And, the Giants had made the decision to stick with Daniel Jones. They had flirted with the Patriots to see, and we all know it was in Hard Knocks. They had flirted to see what kind of price are the Patriots talking about. And if they're going to make it reasonable and very doable to move, yeah, okay. And that would have made sense because you knew you had Daniel Jones for this year. You were committed to him. And if you were drafted, if you could get the pick to move up with New England and get Drake May, right? Because that's the guy they were interested in. You get him, you sit him this year, you play Daniel Jones, and then you see how it plays out. And then you had the escape clause after this season. You could have said, okay, Drake, you sat for a year. Now you play in 2025. That would have made sense had the Patriots not put such an incredibly high price on the pick. They didn't want to trade it. They were absolutely sold on Drake May to the point where they were never going to take a deal for him because they were like, there's no price high enough to make us trade out of this spot. They wanted Drake May 150%. So when the Giants made the inquiry and said, well, look, if it turns out that the price isn't going to be too prohibitive, let's make a deal and then we'll have the rookie number 1 draft pick in-house and we've got Daniel Jones. And this way, at the end of the season, however it plays out, we've got an answer. I don't for the life of me understand the criticism of the Giants front office on how they played that out because it made perfect sense. If the price was reasonable, go get the rookie, let him sit for a year, and then figure out what you're going to do in the offseason. Made perfect sense. Look what the Chiefs did. They had Alex Smith. They drafted Mahomes. Let him sit for a year. In the offseason, we'll figure out what to do. Then Mahomes plays. And Alex Smith went away. It made perfect sense. It was brilliant. But the Patriots weren't going to budge. They were all in 10 times over with a capital A on Drake May. So the Giants, nobody else was going to get him. That's it. So it wasn't that the Giants were giving up on Daniel Jones because they weren't. And it wasn't that, they were going to go all in to make a deal to get Drake May either, because they weren't. They were looking to make a reasonable deal so that they would have an insurance policy and could hedge their bets at the end of the season. It was brilliant. Now, while all of this happened, I did a tremendous amount of research on the quarterback situation and first-round picks and Super Bowl appearances, et cetera, over the course of the last 25 years or so. And Scott, you are so correct. The stats, the historical stats that are proof and evidence, this is where emotion gets in the way with a lot of people. The facts and the evidence, and I will be glad to share this with you maybe next week not next week, maybe next week, I don't know, or the week after. At some point in time, I will reshare some of those facts with you. I did share some of the facts in the spring, and you should have seen the firestorm of people firing bows and arrows because they were overcome with emotion about getting a new quarterback, and they did not want to hear facts. The facts will surprise an awful lot of people at how a first-round quarterback, especially high in the first few picks, and the number one pick in particular, is probably not much better than flipping a coin. It's the percentage of guarantee of success is incredibly low. You would not want to put your house's mortgage on it. You would not want to bet your favorite vacation bank account or the bank account that you use for your family vacation on it. You would not want to do that. But I will share that information down the road with you, Scott. I promise you. And of course, there will be those who want to ignore it, and there will be those who will get angry by it. But facts are facts. And I will be very glad to share that stuff with you down the road. It's another one of the reasons why I believe a team in the Giants situation really needs to be very specific and careful about a bridge quarterback, because at least the bridge quarterback has played in the National Football League before. And if you pick the right guy who has won games in this league, you at least have a known commodity. You know something about what you're getting because the guy's got an NFL track record. That's one of the reasons why I see logic there, that's a better bet in the short term, especially when you don't have a Justin Herbert, who was another guy who I was all in on when he came out in the draft. That turned out pretty well for the Chargers too. There are no Justin Herberts or Andrew Lucks in this draft, according to the people who do this for a living. Now, if there were, you could certainly make a better case for doing what you could to get one. As George Young always said years ago, you don't want to go into the draft making a pick out of desperation. That is a horrible gamble because then you tend to overdraft. And most teams will overdraft a quarterback high in the first round. That's just the way the league works. And I have some significant evidence that will prove that fact to you. And we'll just talk about it another time. But Scott, thanks for bringing it up. That's not to say that you don't take one. I want to make that clear too. Don't take me out of context, folks. If the Giants are all in and committed on a quarterback up there high in the first round, they have a responsibility to take that guy. But we all do know that a team in that situation is still probably better off, according to the percentages, of having that rookie sit for a year. and having a veteran play that first year. So I got to believe they're going to sign some kind of bridge in March. If you just play the logical percentages, the way history has worked out. And I think the type of contract, the money, et cetera, you'll have an idea if they sign a bridge in March based on that guy's terms, what they're thinking about in the draft. Again, I'm not saying they should not take one. What I'm saying is if you take one as a dual-pronged attack to the position, it makes a lot more sense and logic based on the risk factor. Sean says, we needed to win the war and not worry about small battles. Well, again, that's the same kind of stuff I heard with the quote Chase Young thing a few years ago. And I've already kind of told you how that turned out. So I'm sorry, Sean. I can't agree with that opinion. You're certainly entitled to have it, and I won't knock you for it. But I cannot agree with that opinion. This is Danny Dudd's Ghost again. This is a guy who's been, I think he's been on our show before, and he's been very critical of Daniel Jones. Unfortunately, at this point, that's an irrelevant comment because Daniel Jones is no longer on the team. Daniel Jones was very good in 2022. We've talked about the come from behind victories. We talked about the playoff win in Minnesota, which was spectacular, by the way, that day. He was sensational, and that's what earned him his extension. We know he's been hurt. We know that he played well enough to win a bunch of games in the first 6 weeks of this season, and he was let down by horrible, unclutched play by a lot of his teammates. And then he kind of hit a little bit of a rocky road himself, and we all know what happened. So, Danny, I think what you're doing there, you got a little revisionist history with the facts. There were clearly some things that were definitely worthy about Daniel Jones. I firmly predict that Daniel Jones will resurface as a starter in this league and will win a slew of games. It wouldn't shock me even if for some reason Minnesota can't come to terms with Darnold and they don't tag him. I don't know if they will or they won't. If Daniel Jones winds up starting for the Vikings in September and does very, very well for them, that would not surprise me at all. And you know what? If you want to take me out of context on that and shoot your venom, go ahead and do it. Because none of us are going to know what Daniel Jones is going to be in the future until that plays out. So if you want to be short-sighted and take your shots now, go ahead and do it. But it means nothing because we won't know until time plays out. But I think Daniel Jones is going to come back and have a resurgence in this league and win games. I do believe that. Let's see here. Scott Young says Danny Dodds. I think ownership really. Oh, he's talking back to Danny Dudd's Ghost. I think ownership really liked Daniel Jones. Everybody liked Daniel Jones. There was nothing not to like about Daniel Jones. Let's see. Scott says, I hope they don't blow it up. There's a lot here that these are fractions. This is why I'm not big on chats or big on Twitter. I don't like it as much because you get these fractions. And I know that I give a lot of answers and I talk a lot and I try to be complete. And when I do that, I get a lot of these things in the chat that are out of context. And so then sometimes by the time I get to them, it's either repetitive or it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I do apologize. Scott says, that's all you ever hear about saying that Joe Schoen had a terrible draft. This past draft was excellent. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Scott, and you are always free to double check facts when I give them to you, because I spend a tremendous amount of effort making sure that I deal with facts, not rumors, not emotions, and not hypotheticals. I'm a fact-based guy. When the other day, and this is simply a memory question. The other day, preparing for the radio pregame show, I believe I counted 16 players from the last two drafts, including the undrafted rookie free agents, which you have to give the personnel department and the GM credit for. I believe 16 from the last two drafts are on this club right now and have either given the Giants, starting snaps, or they've been injured, or they've given them heavy rotational snaps. Or at least, like in Jay Kubas's case, not heavy rotational snaps, but he started 2 games already here down at the end of the season, and it's been quality play. I think it's 16 players from the last 2 drafts. I wish, let me just maybe I could take a real quick glance. Let's see here. All right, let's see. Okay, Neighbors, Nubin, Phillips, Johnson, Tracy, Muasau, Kubas, and Chapman. So it's 8 players from this year's rookie class to credit to Joe Shane. Last year, Banks, John Michael Schmitz, Hyatt, Gray, Hawkins, Riley, Javarius Owens really didn't really get into doing anything, so I won't count him. Also, you got to count Bryce Ford Wheaton, and you have to count Tommy DeVito. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 with the 2 undrafted rookie free agents. So that's 16 players that the Giants personnel department under Joe Shane brought in through the draft or as undrafted rookie free agents from the last 2. Now let's go back to 2022. Thibodeau, Neal, Robinson, Izudu, Flott, Bellinger, Belton, McFadden, Davidson, all part of this team, and have given the Giants either starts or significant reserve snaps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 9. That's 9 players. McKeithen and Beavers. McKeithen was hurt, didn't really work out. He was more of a project in the 5th round anyway. You can't hold that against anybody, a 5th rounder, if they don't make it. Darian Beavers was a 6th rounder who had a phenomenal rookie training camp that summer, blew out his knee, was never the same, and unfortunately was unable to make it back to the level that he was supposed to, and did not stick. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 from 2022, and I can't remember now if there were any undrafted rookie free agents that have stuck from the 2022 class. I apologize for that. But that's still 9 guys, 8 from last year, 8 from this year. So that's 25 players. 25 players from Joe Shane's and the personnel department's 3 drafts. 25 of them have given the Giants at least some level of production. Look, that's a fact. That's a fact. So the people who say he hasn't done much to help rebuild this team, they really need to check on their mathematics. That would help an awful lot, because the emotions are kind of creating a barrier between the numbers and the facts and the way you're rationalizing your opinions. I'm just dealing in facts, folks. That's what I do. All right. What else? Yeah. Scott says, I know you love Jimmy G. Yeah, I happen to be a Jimmy Garoppolo fan. He is a unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. He is a veteran quarterback who is 33 years old, who has obviously come off some injuries, a couple of significant ones. He had a broken hand, and he also had a torn ACL last year. So he does not have a lot of mileage or wear on his tires. So he's a young 33. And oh, yeah, by the way, not only has he won games, he's also gone to a Super Bowl. So if I were a team looking for a bridge quarterback, he would be extremely intriguing to me. Let's just leave it at that for now, Scott. How about that? Because I think that's just about where it needs to stay. Anybody else here? I think we really will cut this. Let's see here. Scott says, so a lot of guys played their butt off that don't usually get playing time yesterday. Yeah, no question about that. Mentions Andrew Thomas. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. Scott Young says, again, Scott's really busy here on the chat with Christine. I appreciate you guys. Thank you. I'd like to see some other new people get in too. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Scott says, I beg Giant fans, don't buy into all the draft buildup with a quarterback. It will all play out in the end. Okay. James O'Keefe. Hey, Paul, I was at the game yesterday, and everyone in my section was cheering and happy with the win. Some moaning and groaning on the way out about losing number 1 draft pick, but I'll take the win. Okay, and that's what I'm saying. I'm saying people who were at the game, and I don't know what the final number of the attendance was. I know the last 3 home games haven't been well attended. I understand that. The frustration over the season, it's palatable. But the people who were at the game, James, they were vocal. You were one of them. I have a hunch that you were probably cheering. And you said you had a good time. You're living in the present. It's a beautiful thing. And again, you know what? I'll go 8 more minutes. We're coming up on over 2 hours and 20 minutes with this program tonight. I didn't know how long we would go because we started at 8 o'clock. We usually have this program. For those of you who don't know, we usually do this program every Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. We go for 1.5 hours, 90 minutes, and I'll go 2 or 2.5 hours if need be. You know, if there's enough attraction, I'm here. But because of the holiday, you know, with last week being Christmas, this week being New Year's, we had to change it up a little bit. And tonight we started at 8 o'clock on a Monday night. Not a usual situation for me doing this program. So I wasn't sure exactly what kind of response we would get. But the response has been good enough that we're coming up on almost 2.5 hours. So big applause and thumbs up to all you folks who wanted to join the program tonight. But by all means, don't just watch and listen. I appreciate that. I love the fact that, you know, we're able to provide something for you. But by all means, participate. I mean, it's cool. It's cool. I think you guys, whether or not you're a regular or not, you know, yes. Am I fact-based in what I talk about and how I try to present logic and so forth? Yeah, but I'm always okay to agree to disagree. Again, I understand the emotions that are out there. Just know that I am coming with facts, though. That's all. I'm coming with facts, and I'll give them to you. And if they don't change your mind, you're entitled to keep your opinion. If the facts make sense, which they always will because they're the truth, you're certainly entitled to maybe change your mind. That's okay too. Christine says, please also remember there is a good interior D-line in next year's draft. Actually, Christine, from what I understand, it is a terrific draft for defensive linemen. So, yes, absolutely. I would think that that's an area that the Giants are going to explore because the value is going to be there. And when there is good value and it happens to meet one of your needs, that's even better. Also, some cornerbacks as well. Well, there's no doubt about that either. Now, I will tell you this, though. And again, this has to be part of the onion or part of the prism. One of the options for the Giants, wherever it is that they finish, would be, especially if they're higher rather than lower, would be to trade out. Get more picks. Maybe not just for this year, but maybe get more picks for next year. Because let's face it, right? Think about the logic here. If you get more picks for next year, you drop down maybe a few, and you add a number one next year. You swap a one this year, you add a number one next year, you add a number two next year. All of a sudden now that gives you more draft capital in the 2026 draft. And if you can already forecast based on your intel that that's a better year for the cluster of quarterbacks coming out, well, again, as long as you've taken care of your bridge in March, you could even lean even more that way. And this way, now you've got extra capital in your pocket and you got an extra thick wallet to whip that sucker out in the spring of 2026 and maybe get somebody who you really, really have some eyes on, because that's supposed to be a healthy quarterback class in 2026. Now, I said before, I don't like to deal in hypotheticals. I don't. That's not my MO. But for the front office, that's not as much a hypothetical as it is for us, because they have a great deal of tape and intel on each of these draft classes. They usually go about 2 years out. So it's not as much hypothetical for them as it would be for us to talk about. Brian says, agreed. Dex needs help. He's talking to Christine. Absolutely. Thagomizer says, so we shouldn't be upset about not being able to draft one of the top two quarterbacks. We should give Locke big money for one good game, like we gave Jones $40 million a year for one good game. No, not at all. If it turns out that the Giants sign, or any team in their situation should sign the appropriate bridge quarterback in March, and you are not able to select one of these top two quarterbacks that everybody's talking about in the draft, it should not upset you at all. Zero. You should not be upset about that one bit. Because if you sign the proper bridge, you will rebound to respectability the following year, 2025, and then you can move forward in 2026 and perhaps get one of those really shiny red apples that are supposedly on the quarterback tree in April of 2026, which, as so many people say, they want to look long-term. They're looking for the next franchise guy. Well, again, the people who do the draft study for a living, 12 months out of the year, they seem to believe that the quarterback tree in 26 is a lot better than the quarterback tree in 25. So if the Giants decide that that's the way they want to go, you should not be the least bit disturbed. Absolutely not, because there'll be logic in that theory and it would be fine. Now, I don't know if they will do that, and I'm not even saying that they should. What I'm saying is it's a viable option. There are a lot of roads to get through the river, over the river and through the woods to grandma's house. There are plenty of roads, plenty of paths to go. That one is viable. There are others that are viable too. The point is, in your scenario, just to throw a Harry, if they can't get one of the top 2 quarterbacks in this year's draft, that's emotion talking. Okay? You're entitled to feel that way. Be my guest. If it plays out like that and you want to throw a Harry, go ahead and do it. You're entitled to do it. It's not very productive, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense that just because they didn't take your road to grandma's house and they took one of the other 3 or 4, well, they may wind up getting to grandma's house and you may be left in the woods. You gotta understand the possibilities. Okay? Maybe it'll work out that they take the road and it doesn't work out. And maybe your road turned out to be better anyway. But we won't know that until at least a couple of years, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And then you could always say, oh, I thought they should have done that. It didn't work out this way. But at least if you take your emotion out and you just think about the possibilities, you might be able to say to yourself, all right, I understand what they did. I know why they did it. There was logic behind it. It made sense. There were some facts that added up to that. And all right, it didn't work out because of this. That's what happened with the Daniel Jones thing. There was a ton of logic behind the extension for Daniel Jones. And a bunch of things played out that wound up sabotaging the situation. That's why the ultimate result turned out poorly. It was not a bad plan. It was a logical plan. It was a good road to go down. But then the bridge got washed out by the storm. It happens sometimes that way. That's why pro sports are not a guarantee. That's why any sport is not a guarantee. Heck, if everybody had hindsight and could look into their crystal ball and execute hindsight before something happened, well, guess what? Then no coach would ever be fired. No coach or GM would ever be fired. No personnel guy would ever be fired. And everybody would sign with one team at the beginning of their careers, and then they would stay there until they were ready to retire. You would never have any change or movement in any personnel whatsoever if every single decision was correct and worked out right. But of course, that does not exist in the real world. Anyway, thanks for the comment and appreciate the opportunity to go through it with you. Let's see here. What else do we have? A couple more minutes. Geez, we're already over 2.5 now. Let's see here. Dagomizer U235 is agreeing with Scott's comment. Says, agreed, there needs to be a non-flagrant pass interference penalty that's 10 yards. Scott was saying that just a couple of clicks earlier. I hate the pass interference penalty. It changes the game so badly. They need to change that. Well, again, all of the rules in this league for many years have been built to help the offense. They have all been to make things more difficult on the defense. So I don't think you're ever going to see that because the league believes that offense sells tickets, sells interest, sells ratings, therefore sells economic benefit. That's just the way it is. But I understand the thought. Okay. What else do we have here? Scott says Malik Neighbors is an excellent receiver. I wish he just catches with his hands more than with his body. Well, again, he's doing a lot better in this last month of the season. Agomizer, U235, too many 50-yard ticky-tack PI penalties changing the game. Again, I'm not going to argue with you, man, because it's clear that some of the with so many teams that are so closely matched in terms of overall talent level, you have a lot of questionable calls or non-calls that actually wind up deciding games. And that's because of so much mediocrity or parity, you pick the word, that there is in the National Football League. There were very few teams in this game. There's the handful of the elites. There were very few teams in this league that can overcome an incorrect penalty or non-call. Overcome that and then still go on to victory. Now, I'm not just talking about one call, but if it's a critical one in the most inopportune time, yeah, it could be just one call. But a lot of times, it's an accumulation of two or three calls during the course of a game that will just sink a team's ship. And there's nothing they can do about it because they're simply not good enough to overcome those penalties or non-calls, if you will. Scott Young says a lot of people were complaining about Giants signing Brian Burns. Well, they traded for him and then signed him to an extension. He says, but that guy's been playing injured all year, stand-up player. Couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely, positively. Now, as I said at the start of the year, when the Giants made the deal with Burns, they expected him to be a double-digit sack player. That has not happened, primarily because there's been not only injuries to him, that he's playing banged up, but in addition to that, Dexter Lawrence has missed the second half of the season. Kayvon Thibodeau missed over a month with a broken hand. I know Azeez Ojulari did step in for a few weeks and did real well till he got hurt. But the fact remains, some circumstances have hindered Burns' overall production. If you watch the Giants on a game-by-game basis and a snap-by-snap basis, you will know that Brian Burns has been the highest quality, most consistent player on the field from start to finish. He's also been a sensational teammate and a wonderful leader in the locker room. Brian Burns is a great asset to this team moving forward. There is no question about that. So, Scott, I'm with you. All right. Let's see what else. Thagomizer U235 says, Neighbors, 9 drops is too many. I actually have him for 10. And Scott, and Thagomizer U235, my rule of thumb over the years that I've been covering the National Football League is pretty simple. Take your total catches for every 100 catches that a guy has, and you can base your mathematics off the percentages. But for every 100 catches a guy has, I don't want to see more than 6 drops. 6% of drops on the season compared to your catch ratio is kind of the number that I can digest based on what I've seen over the years. That's pretty much where the number, anything above that is kind of sticky. You know, it bothers you. You want to get the number down to that range. So yes, 10 drops with just over 100 catches, that is too many. That is too many. He's got to get that down. But as I mentioned, over the last month, he's got none. And he's making more of the catches above the X's and the O's that the Giants need and that they expect from him. So Thagomizer U235, or no, Thagomizer U235. I'm sorry. I absolutely agree that is something you want to watch going into next year, but I believe we're already seeing some growth and development from Malik Neighbors. And I really do believe that that he is going to improve on that. It seems like he already has in the final month of this season. Geez, we're going a little bit longer here. Christine says Brian Burns, a true pro, plays with heart and toughness. Absolutely. Dagomizer, U235 says the same thing. He's played through hand injuries. Don't think he was worth second and fifth round picks and 29 mil this year when we can run out of cap without D-line 2 next to Dex and CB1. Well, again, I still think what you must understand, and I tell people this all the time, when you go back and you look at something, you have to reverse the calendar. Go back to the time the decision was made to take that path or that fork in the road. And you have to say, at that time, was it a logical decision based on what you could reasonably expect from the player? And there's no question that based on what the Giants were needing, based on the way the contract could be structured, based on what they had in terms of draft capital, and what Brian Burns has proven to do in this league, it was an absolutely slam dunk logical decision to make the deal, to give him the extension, and to get him on the field. Okay? I don't think anybody in the Giants organization has even a second thought about it or would bat an eye. It was a logical trade. It has worked out okay. All right? That's my evaluation of it. I think it's worked out okay, and I think it's going to be even better when he's healthier next year, when this defense is healthier next year, and when the Giants are in a much more competitive and respectable position next year and forward going into even 26, you're going to be absolutely thrilled that Brian Burns is one of the heart and souls of this team. Right now, we still have to let the clock kind of really pass judgment on that deal. So I'll hedge a little bit. I won't tell you that you're wrong. It's your opinion. I think everyone's opinion right now, long term on that deal, is still one that's got to sit and brew for a while. Time will tell. Initial feeling, I feel it was pretty good. All right, let's see. Oh, my goodness. We got a whole bunch more here. Oh, I'm going to try to get to some new people here before I shut it down because it looks like we may have to go a full 3 hours. Oh, my goodness. This is wild. Scott Young says a lot of Giants fans don't understand our GM has gotten a Giant out of salary cap hell. Well, he's gotten the team out of salary cap hell, if that's what you mean. He's certainly had some difficult stuff to work with in his 3 years here. And I feel he's navigated it well. I mean, consider this. For everybody out there who did not appreciate the Daniel Jones deal, well, think about it. The Daniel Jones deal had the trigger in it where they're only going to get hit for about $25 million of dead cap money next year after just a short time with the deal. They actually had an escape clause that doesn't cripple their cap. Unlike what's going to happen with the Jets and Aaron Rodgers. Their cap is going to be destroyed by the deal that they signed Aaron Rodgers to. Derek Carr's deal with the New Orleans Saints. Kirk Cousins' deal with the Atlanta Falcons. These teams are going to be blasted with cap problems because of the deals that they signed with those players. To be frank, I think that it was very crafty, wise, and savvy of Joe Schoen, even though I know they were in on Daniel Jones, and quite frankly, I was all in on Daniel Jones. I still think the minute the deal was signed, we all knew that there was going to be a potential escape clause should things go awry at the end of the 24 season. Well, as it turned out, worst case scenario, did not want it to happen, but Murphy's Law is part of the New York Giants in 2024. If something can go wrong, it will. Well, it did. And it necessitated Daniel Jones's exit. Well, guess what? Because a reasonable escape clause was constructed into the contract, the Giants are not going to be crippled by that. Joe Schoen deserves actually a tremendous amount of credit for that, as opposed to some of the folks who see it the other way because they're looking at it through the other side of the binoculars and think that, oh, this was terrible. No, actually, if you look at some of the other quarterbacks who have signed big deals in the last several years, their departure has significantly bloodied their team's salary cap, much more than the Giants will deal with at the end of this season. All right, Kenneth Taylor. I am a Giants fan ever since I was 10, and now I'm 70. Okay. I don't think I could have dealt with them losing the final home game in the 100th season of the franchise. So with that, I am glad they won. Okay, Kenneth. I appreciate your interest in our program. Welcome. I don't remember if we've had you as one of our comments before in the chat, but if we have, welcome back. If we haven't, welcome as a first timer. Always appreciate that. Let's see here. Thagomizer U235 says Grenard. I think he means Grenard and Hunter are having better years and less money and no draft picks given up. Again, you're also talking about hindsight and just looking at right now. At the time the deal was made, it was a logical path. And you're also only looking at 1 year of hindsight. Thagomizer, U235, get back to us again after next year and the year after that, and we'll have a better opportunity to evaluate it. You may turn out to be correct in your assessment of the results. That's possible. It's also possible that you'll be on the wrong side of that. Time will tell. Time will tell. At this point, I feel pretty optimistic about the way it's going for the Giants, though. Okay. Dagomizer tells Scott that Jones was a terrible misevaluation. Eagles love that we didn't accept trade offer for Bradbury so that they could get gift CB1, and that we didn't make offer to Saquon for a gift, probably. Well, Dagomizer, again, you gotta try to let some of your emotions not cloud your numbers and your facts on this one. James Bradbury, yeah, he was glad to sign there, and he gave him one decent year, but then he petered out real quick. And so much so that they were trying to get rid of him this past offseason, and then they moved him to safety. And, the back end of that contract not working out so well for the Eagles. They way overpaid for Saquon. That was a risk, but was one worth taking. You got to understand something. First of all, the Giants tried to keep Saquon at least twice in the previous year and a half, and he turned down their offers. The final offer, after another year of about 900 yards and a sprained ankle and another year under his belt and more wear on his tires, there was no way that anybody else was going to offer more than what the Eagles did. They came in with a very big number because they figured it's worth the gamble. We don't care how old this guy is. We don't care how many injuries he's had. We think we're one player away from being a legitimate Super Bowl team. So we will gladly open up the vault, pay more than anybody else. It's kind of like what the Mets are doing with Juan Soto, right? The Yankees did it when they made the deal with the Padres, and now the Mets are doing it that Soto was a free agent. There comes a time where there's a team in a position where they think that's the one element they have to get. So they will take whatever risk is necessary and outbid everybody else, regardless of the risk, to go get the guy. So to be quite frank with you, the Eagles did business-wise what they should have done. The Giants also did business-wise what they should have done. Both teams took a logical path based on all of the factors involved in the player signing. Both teams were very smart. Now, if Saquon Barkley does not give the Philadelphia Eagles 4 quality postseason games this year and at least get them to the Super Bowl, then their deal did not really pay off in year 1 as much as they wanted it to. He's still, I don't think he's going to play this weekend against the Giants. I really don't. But whether or not he does, the 2,000 yards, that's not what the Eagles made the deal for. The Eagles made the deal with Saquon Barkley to get the postseason games that they need. In this case, they're going to need 4 wins to get the Lombardi Trophy. Those 4 games are the games that they paid Saquon Barkley for. The 2,000 yards that he got during the regular season, maybe even the MVP that he got during the regular season, will not fulfill their requests or their value request from Barkley if they do not get at least to the Super Bowl, and really, they need to win. Because after all, as we all say, there's only one team standing at the end of the Super Bowl, and everybody else is a loser. So Barkley needs to be healthy for their 4 postseason games and needs to produce and be someone who helps get them to the Super Bowl and win it. If he gets hurt any time before that, they will have fallen short in year 1 of their gamble. I'm sorry, Dagomizer, but sometimes we just got to put the logic out there on the table. But again, I do appreciate you for being part of the program. Kelly Fisher says the Giants have been bad for over 10 years. They've been to the playoffs twice within the last 10 years, 2016 and 2022. So that statement is actually inaccurate. You could say they've been poor for most of the last 10 years, but they did have 2 playoff seasons. They are in another rebuild and aren't any closer to being a consistent playoff team. Fans are frustrated with losing. We've had that conversation many times during this program tonight about emotion, about frustration, about what sometimes turns into anger even. So you're absolutely right. That part of your statement is absolutely right. As far as being a consistent playoff team, wow. There are very few franchises in this league that are consistent playoff teams. I believe the number, Lance Meadow on Big Blue Kickoff Live this past year, I remember saying, I believe in each of the last 5 years, and I'm paraphrasing him, and I did not look it up myself, but I think in each of the last 5 years, there have been 5 playoff teams that were not in the playoffs the year before. And that's been happening consistently over each of the 5 years prior to this season. I did not look at this season's playoff roster yet. I mean, we know pretty much who's in it. I know there's some couple of things still to be determined. But I believe that the comment that he was able to research is that in each of the previous 5 years, there have been 5 new playoff teams that didn't make it from the year before, which basically goes to your point about being a consistent playoff team. There are very few franchises in the National Football League that are fortunate enough to be a consistent playoff team. So the comment holds water, but there are very few that can avoid that fate. So try not to lose too much sleep over that, because most of the teams in the league are in that same boat. Yes, Scott Young says Bradbury is not even playing for the Eagles. I tried to explain that to Mr. Thagomizer, who I'm guessing he hasn't followed the Eagles closely enough to know that Bradbury gave them 1 year of that was significance, and in fact, then also committed a horrifying penalty that that cost them. Maybe he doesn't remember that either, or maybe he didn't see it. I'm not sure. Oh, here we go. Dagermeister again. Bradbury was key to Eagles Super Bowl in 2022. Again, we told you, the back end of the contract not working out real well. Yes, Scott. Scott says, go back and watch the playoff Super Bowl. The Eagles were in. Bradbury was burned several times. He did help them get far that one season, though, Scott. That's a fact. That's a fact. Again, we recognize facts. Beyond that, it's, again, they're not getting full value out of that contract. That was not a great contract. Brian says, what was more key for Eagles getting the Super Bowl was the 49ers losing 3 of their quarterbacks. Well, there's no doubt about that. I mean, only somebody who wasn't watching those games could tell you that. But that's neither here nor there. The bottom line is they did get there. That's a fact. Again, we live in facts. They did get there. I agree with you. That was a significant reason as to why. But it is what it is. They still did what they did. Justin says, thanks for taking our questions, even us grouchy fans. Oh, man. No sweat, man. No sweat. That's what I'm here. Again, that's what I'm here for. All right. Sean Jackson says, happy holidays, Paul. Can we beat the Eagles without a catch to it? Last year's finale, we beat Philly in a losing season. We beat them this Sunday. Saquon may still set rushing record, and we dropped draft spots. Sean, I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen in this game or who the Eagles will play or not play. If I were them, I would not risk my meal ticket. Saquon Barkley was brought in with a massive contract that's going to, create a lot of dead money for them on the back end if he does not stay healthy over the duration of the deal. Their best bet is to build on his MVP type season this year and hope that he gives them 4 terrific postseason games to get the Lombardi Trophy. That is really their best bet. They've gotten to this point. He's been healthy. They have whistled Dixie past the injury graveyard and got a guy who had a phenomenal season because he's one of the top 3 most talented backs in football. And he's healthy. So far, they've beaten the devil. Now, they need these 4 postseason games out of him to get the Lombardi. So I would not play him no matter what about the Eric Dickerson record thing. No. If it mattered in terms of seeding that could help them out that way, I would say let him play the first half and see where he goes. But now that they're locked into the 2, it's not going to make them any better off if he plays or doesn't play. I think based on what they have risked in terms of money and contract to bring him there, their 4 postseason games, that's what that contract is about. Nothing he's done to this point really matters. If he doesn't help bring them the trophy, this first season falls short of their expectations. So for the Giants, it's still about their preparation and trying to win a game. Whoever the Eagles put on the field, the Giants will try to win the game. They will break their butts, just like they did against the Colts yesterday, and try to win the game and try to feel good about what they put on tape and feel good about their final game of the season. And hopefully for them, beat one of their arch rivals. That's all it can be about. You can't read anything more into this game, no matter what. It's about one game Another chance for guys to show that they can enhance their stature within the organization and that they belong here going forward into the offseason. That's really what it means. And they're going to try to win it. They really are. The more guys that participate in victories, the better off their standing will be for the team going into next year. And if it's done because the Eagles played all their backups, well, there's still value in that because you still won and you'll see guys perform at a winning level. But then it's going to be up to the personnel guys to determine how much value did those players add to their resumes. Is it 1.5 inches or is it 3 inches? What is it? That's the question, Sean, in all honesty. And Happy New Year back to you. Dagomeiser talks about Bradbury again, all-pro year. They didn't have to even make draft picks for him. It was a big upgrade. Again, we told you that. Yes, the Bradbury deal started out well for the Eagles and then quickly went downhill. Dagomeiser, you're an Eagles fan because I don't care about a player that's not with the Giants anymore. Okay, says Scott. Jeffrey Pettiford says it was against the 50-year-old quarterback. Stop. Oh, I guess he's probably, I don't know. Was he? Well, I think he's probably talking about Joe Flacco. But Jeffrey, no one is crowing about the job the defense did against Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco, I think, is 43 years old. And he threw for over 300 yards, and the Colts gained well over 400 yards. That was not a great defensive effort. In fact, if you were on this program earlier tonight, I said it was probably one of the lower defensive efforts of the season by the Giants, but the offense was incredibly spectacular and actually won a shootout. Who'd have thunk it, right? So, Jeffrey, if that's what you're talking about, well, everybody's in agreement with you. That was not a great defensive performance. The crowing is about the offensive explosion. Try to be more careful. Let's see. G. Graham, no matter what the Giants do, Paul's going to agree with them. They cut the checks. Well, we have a program on this channel every week called Game Balls and Gassers, and there's nothing agreeable about a gasser because the evaluation on the Giants offense, defense, and special teams the day after every game that goes up on this channel does come right down critically on the worst aspects of the Giants' performance on offense, defense, and special teams. My defensive gasser this week for the Colts game was on Tay Banks, their first-round draft pick from last year, for his 2 pass interference penalties. And I said you could also give a full gasser to the entire defense for as much as they had given up in terms of yardage and points against the Colts. So, in fact, you've made an inaccurate statement, and that's the truth. So thank you, G. Graham, for allowing me to clear that up and to disprove your sentence. Let's see what we have here. Isaac Moore, bridge quarterback in Vumming. I'm not sure I understand that, but that's okay. But Isaac Moore, thanks so very much for chiming in. Let's see here. Isaac Moore comes back. Geez, we got a lot of people. Over 3 hours tonight. We're almost to 800 folks actually zooming in on tonight's program. Isaac says, bridge quarterback incoming. We have to get a competent quarterback. Draft is a crapshoot. Well, Isaac, I hope you were on the program earlier tonight when I talked about that very philosophy. It is absolutely one of the ways to go over the river and through the woods to grandma's house. Yes, the bridge quarterback philosophy, I think, is very sound, has a tremendous amount of beef and teeth to it, And I think we're going to find out in March exactly how strong the Giants believe in the bridge quarterback theory. But I appreciate the fact that you see the logic in it. Not everybody does. Gary Gaston, hey, P-Dot, this week's Sights and Sounds was very good to see the players happy. Why do they only show it when we win? I would like to see it in losses too. Well, Gary, that's the reason that they show it when they win. Most people, remember, the stuff that's put up on the website, they track everything that gets numbers, right? Everybody tracks circulation, ratings, clicks, whatever the case may be. So the internet, and I don't want to speak for the internet department there at the Giants, but in general, I'll say this in general. Somebody who's running an internet site is going to try to put stuff up that's going to be the most interest to their viewers, right? The stuff that's going to get the most clicks. So, Sights and Sounds, it has been determined over the years that when the Giants win a game, fans love to go see the Sights and Sounds because it makes them happy. They see things that they like, that they enjoy, that they think is funny, that adds to their enthusiasm and excitement for what they saw. And that particular item is going to get a lot of clicks. So from a business perspective, it's not necessarily fruitful to spend a lot of time putting together Sights and Sounds, which does take a lot of time to edit. Okay, it does. The production department down there at the Giants is really good, and it takes an awful lot of effort and time to do those things. If they're going to do that after a loss, and then because the team lost, a lot of people aren't even going to bother looking at it, and that's kind of what happens. So that's why you see it after a win and not after a loss, at least based on pure logic and business sense. I will not speak for the production department firsthand. I'm not part of the production department. I'm announcing team, but I do know that they do track, like every good business does, the stuff that people like to consume and the stuff that people aren't really hot to consume. They're not going to put a lot of time and effort into it because it's just not very fruitful. So, Gary, I appreciate the thought, but I think that's probably the best way to describe the situation. Sean Jackson says, Paul, was the Giants' 45-point explosion yesterday a product of a tailor-made matchup against the Colts defense? The Colts underestimating the Giants or a combination of other factors? Giants haven't averaged 20 points. Sean, I spent the first 20 minutes of this program on going over all of the things that the Giants did, and many of them were very reasonable and very routine. All of the different things that the Giants did that allowed them to have this explosion, one of which was a 100-yard kickoff return by Smith-Morset. Most of them, though, were very routine things. So here's what I'll say. If you please take the time, go back and watch through the first 20 minutes or so of the program. To go over that now at this late hour, it's already, oh my goodness, it's after 11 o'clock Eastern time. We've got just about 800 people chiming into the program live right now, which is awesome. And I really appreciate that. I'm going to go a little bit longer, only because you listeners and viewers, you seem to really be wanting to hang in there with me. So I've already gone a half hour longer than I was going to. I was figuring max 2.5. I'm already over 3. So I'll go a little longer, but Sean, it doesn't pay to repeat that stuff right now. I appreciate the question. The one thing that the Colts matchup provided the Giants, Indianapolis coming into the game had 141 missed tackles during their 7-8 record. So that's 15 games they played with 141 missed tackles. That led the National Football League, number 1 in missed tackles, the most, almost 10 a game. So there is no doubt that while the Giants did a bunch of things cleanly, routinely, and in a clutch way, a lot of the yak yardage that the Giants got was partially because they showed a lot of gumption and they really put a lot into it. And you know what? They just showed so much more effort, I thought. And I maybe effort's not the right word, but for some reason they just seemed to have a little extra spark in getting yak yardage yesterday. Part of that, though, is also because the Colts were the worst tackling team in the NFL. Robinson, Slayton, Neighbors all had some nice juke moves. So did Tyrone Tracy. But in addition to that, all of those guys also showed some very productive yards after contact or yards after the catch, depending upon if you're a running back or you're a receiver. The missed tackles, I didn't count how many exactly there were by the Colts yesterday, but that certainly had to contribute to the explosion. That was the Colts' contribution to it. Now, the Giants have played some other very weak defenses this year and did not take advantage of those elements. They did yesterday. So, yes, give the Giants some credit for that. But you do also have to say that the Colts allowed that atmosphere or the conditions to exist where the Giants could excel in that area. For the rest of it, I invite you to go back to the beginning of the program, Sean. I know you've been a regular with us, but we're over 3 hours in. So I please ask you to go back to the early part of the show. Scott Young says, did everybody see Sanders had New York Giants cleats in his locker? What was that all about? I know that there's been a bunch of stuff online about it. I've seen pictures. I'm not even sure if they were legit or they weren't legit. So I have no comment on that. Yeah, there's really nothing for me to add because I really don't know the full details or the truth of the backstory. So I'm going to leave that one alone, Scott. I like the kid from Oregon, says Scott Young. This year, Dylan Gabriel, yeah, he's small, but he can spin the football. I get it. It's very difficult in today's National Football League with the size of linemen and linebackers for a rather short quarterback to succeed, especially over the long term. Yes, Drew Brees did it. Yes, Baker Mayfield is doing it. Years ago, when the players weren't as big or weren't as fast, weren't as long, weren't as tall, Doug Flutie had some success doing it. Scott, I don't want to besmirch the players' abilities. Oregon has had a sensational year as they head into the college football playoffs as a top dog. I totally understand that. I don't dispute the players' talent, but I do think the height situation is too much for me to overcome. Will someone take a chance on him? Perhaps. I'm not sure how high or how low it's going to be, but the height situation is a significant and real impediment that he's going to have to deal with. Okay. Let's see. Oh, what do we have here? Yeah, no point in talking about the plane. That just doesn't make any sense. That's not a football question, so we're just going to leave that alone. Aiden Fink says, sports dictates emotion as both the fan and for the players, just like what JC was saying in the postgame yesterday. Yes, Jonathan Casillas, part of our official broadcast team, which I am also a part of with the Giants. Interacting with fans and taking sweet time after a win or leaving right away. Yeah, Jonathan Casillas was talking about after he wins, when he was a player, he would go outside the stadium, meet his daughter. They'd pose for pictures. He would take an hour signing autographs and be very pleasant to people leaving the building because he was happy. After a loss, he would immediately shower, get dressed, talk to the media if he had to, and then sprint out to his car. See his daughter, say, no, we're not stopping for pictures. We're not stopping for autographs, because legitimately a loss puts players in a horrific mood. They're people. They bleed, they sweat, they hurt. It's just a fact of life. So yes, Aiden, that's correct. You're relaying Jonathan's Casillas' feelings exactly from the postgame last night. Well, you guys keep coming back, so I guess I got to stay a few more minutes. Sean Jackson, Paul, did Shane and Dable originally receive 4 or 5 year contracts with the Giants? Despite how painful this season's been, I still feel Shane and Dable should have a chance to get their quarterback. Dave Gettleman had 4 years. I do not know the specifics on the length of their contracts. I have seen reported in some places that they were 5, but I do not know the validity of those reports. So I will not comment any further, because I only like to deal in facts. I don't want to deal in speculation. And I do not have that kind of intel upstairs in the front office. That's personal stuff that they have, and it is not my place to discuss that. Only to say that their contracts do run beyond this 2024 season. So anything that they want to do has to take that into account. That much I'm willing to say, but only because that's the only thing that I do know. They did not enter the final season of their contracts in 2024. And that's fair, because that much we know. Aiden comes back and says, Paul, do you plan to continue doing this program after the Giants season ends, or just periodically? I'm not sure yet, to be honest with you. I'm not sure. I think I'd like to keep the program going if the fans want it. I think I'd like to keep going with it. I certainly enjoy doing the Big Blue Kickoff Live show as part of the Giants official broadcast team during the weekday. Whether or not we do a weekend show here with the Big Blue Breakdown, or we do a once-a-week show or a twice-a-week show at night, or maybe we do a lunchtime show, I'm not sure. I'm open to a lot of thoughts on this, because I do think it's going to be a very busy offseason for the Giants. And if you guys really have a want for it, I'm certainly open to considering anything. I mean, this has been kind of an experiment this year. When Sports Illustrated asked me about doing this program, they said to me, well, we'd like you to do at least 2, maybe 3 shows a week. I said, all right, well, what if we do the game balls and gassers after every game, which gives you a 20-minute review of the game, positive and negative, on all 3 facets, as we told the gentleman earlier before, who obviously did not have a grasp of those facts. And then we also do the 3 key matchups that the Giants will be looking at on the Friday before the game. We do that. That's a 20-minute look, state of the team, state of the opponent, and the matchups and why. And then we also do the live program in the middle of the week. So Sports Illustrated wanted this. I told them, well, all right, let's see what we can do. So we came to the agreement. And the agreement was for the season, and we'll see how it goes, and then revisit. And if you guys really want it to happen, maybe we keep it going. I'm not sure exactly what form, but maybe we keep it going. So don't be afraid to reach out, put some comments in the chat box, or put some comments below on the YouTube page. Don't be afraid to do that, because that'll give us an idea of what it is that you guys are thinking, because that's why I'm here. I mean, we're here to do this for you guys. So, hey, I'm a diehard New York Knicks fan. I don't even know if the Knicks won tonight, to be honest with you. And I would have been watching the Knicks game if I didn't have a show to do. But I promise you guys I would be here, especially on a holiday week. So I decided to do the show tonight. Dagomizer says, if Chapman, that's Elijah Chapman, the defensive tackle, bulks up, he can start next year. If not, he'll probably struggle to make the roster. Dagomizer, I will tell you this. Andre Patterson, the Giants defensive line coach, is extremely proud of Elijah Chapman, very, very high on his tools and his abilities, and is very much looking forward to developing him for a second NFL season. So I don't think he's going to struggle to make the roster. I think he's going to have a pretty clear path as long as he doesn't go backwards and does continue to show some development during the offseason. I think Chapman will be on this team as a rotational player. But we'll see. Again, that's for down the road. Timothy Menace, he's one of our regulars. He comes in late tonight now and says, Paul, what young guys can you see getting more snaps with it being the last game of the season? I would like to see Hyatt get more snaps. I agree with you. I mean, what a mystery Jalen Hyatt has been. One of the all-time great mysteries in my 42 years covering the franchise. I'll give you another one. I'd love to see Bryce Ford-Wheaton get a few snaps at wide receiver too, just to get a look. Had a really nice career at West Virginia. When they signed him with a bonus as an undrafted rookie free agent last year, he was signed as a receiver, had a really good camp. They started working him on special teams to enhance his value, to make sure he got a real chance to make the 53. And he blew out his knee. He was going to make it. Comes back this year after tremendous efforts of rehab. Makes the team because of his special teams prowess. But it seems like they've totally forgotten about his ability as a wide receiver. I'd love to see him get some wide receiver snaps against Philadelphia. 6'4", still has good speed. Was a heck of a college receiver. I'd love to see him get a shot and get some targets. Certainly Jalen Hyatt as well. Those two guys right out of the box. Yeah, I would definitely like to see those guys get some more snaps. There's probably a few other guys too, as I think about it. I like Turbo Miller, the practice squad running back. We all know his story. He's got, sub 4.3 speed, and he needs some polish and needs some work. He's basically been a red shirt as a practice squad running back this year. I think he's certainly considered a guy that they wanted to work with. And I think there may be a possibility that, I think they'll want to bring him back for training camp next year. At least I think so. And give him another chance to earn a spot on the roster. Yeah, I'd love to see him get a couple of snaps. Sure I would. I'm not sure. I haven't really asked anybody lately where his progress is and how much better he is now compared to August. But I know he had a terrific training camp. And it was clear to me that they were not going to let him out of the building. Now, he didn't make the 53, but he was on the practice squad, and they were glad to have him. So he'd be another guy that I certainly would like to see too. There's probably a couple of more too, but I haven't really thought about it. And right now I'm a little loopy at this time of the night. Almost, oh my goodness, yeah, it's almost 11:30. I pretty much had enough, but I'm going to try to take this to a few more minutes and get you a clean 3.5 hour show. Thagomizer comes back with Dante Miller, fastest running back in the NFL and Giants practice squad, never given a chance this year. It's exactly who I was just talking about. And I'm very intrigued by him because he had a terrific camp in August. Terrific. Christine says, thank you, Paul, on explaining Brian Burns. Well, it's really nothing to explain. I mean, the facts are all out there. Nobody's hiding anything. He's been banged up, really banged up most of the year. And his value is not just on the stat line either. He's got a lot of value elsewhere. Two giant goofballs. We are consistent, not playoff team, that's something. Well, again, for the better part of a decade, not a playoff team. That hasn't been good. Nobody's happy about that in the building, I can guarantee you. But the 2 playoff seasons they did have do need to be acknowledged because they are factual. And certainly the playoff victory on the road against Minnesota did happen. It was not a figment of somebody's imagination. That did happen. And, those 2 playoff appearances, for example, are more than the Jets have had in the last decade. I'm just saying, that's a fact. So let's not forget that those games did exist. Jamal Lawson. Top teams always have a really good O-line and running game. I don't think Dable is a good fit as a head coach for this team. He wants a quarterback-centric team. We need a head coach that works to dominate up front. Jamal, I don't think anybody in their right mind would not want a dominant offensive line. The Giants have now gone through 9 different starting offensive line configurations this year. But at least they've cut down on their sacks by about half from last year's historically horrific offensive line. So I think if you had an opportunity to talk to Coach Dable, he would tell you he's very pleased with the progress of the O-line. That's why Carmen Brasillo was brought in, and he's done a really good job. Dable said that the other day. The idea is to get it better. And I don't think anybody is stopping with the Giants having a functional offensive line, which is kind of where they've been for most of this season. No, they want it to get better. They do. I'm telling you, they do want it to get better. So it wouldn't even surprise me if the Giants wound up taking another offensive lineman somewhere in the middle of the draft. Maybe even a little higher, for all I know. I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me because the offensive line does have to keep getting better. It is definitely trended up, but it's not where not where you want it to be. You still want to get higher. All right. One more from Jamal Lawson. We have too many procedural penalties and look unprepared and or soft too often. We also lack the identity. The top teams have really good head coaches that know how to win without the best quarterback play. Jamal, no one is going to disagree about the penalties, specifically procedural. Looking unprepared, I will say this. There have been too many times that I've seen defensively where there's been busted coverages, either guys not getting the communication correctly, not understanding it correctly, or just flat out having a brain lock. I don't know if that necessarily fits with your adjective or not, but that's what I've seen. That's my own eyes. That's not hearsay. I've seen that. So I tell you the facts as I know them. Soft. I know that was a word that was thrown around about a month or so ago. It was kind of misinterpreted a bit. So I'm not even going to go there. I do think that what you've seen since then, since those comments came out, whether or not they were exactly as they were said or twisted, the truth is you've seen this team play very hard and maybe pick it up a bit. And maybe like in response to, a perception, they certainly have played with some gusto and energy. Let's see if we can finish up with what you got here. We also lack an identity. Yeah, I agree with that. The Giants do lack an identity right now. They don't have one. And that's because, quite frankly, a lot of their starters are hurt and out of the lineup. You need the domination from a Dexter Lawrence. You need Kayvon Thibodeau, whose third season has been very disappointing. The broken hand that took him out for a month plus was a big part of that. But Kayvon Thibodeau needs to be at his best to pair with Brian Burns. You need Bobby Okereke, who in 2023 played at a Pro Bowl level or an all-pro level, certainly an all-star level, to be that guy again. He wasn't that guy this year for a variety of reasons. So, yeah, I absolutely agree. The Giants right now do not have an identity. They're still trying to get one because they've got too many guys who are just out of the lineup. Too many backups are playing. Too many guys in the depth chart are playing. That's good because you want them to get experience, mature, and grow. That's good. That's bad because it doesn't allow your starters and the guys you're counting on to formulate the identity that you want. That's a double-edged sword, Jamal. So I appreciate what you're saying there. Again, I'm not disputing anything you're saying. I see where you're coming from. The top teams also have really good head coaches, know how to win without the best quarterback play. Well, quite frankly, the other part of what we saw with the Giants yesterday, Drew Lock was terrific. But one of the reasons he was really terrific is because the guys made plays for him. Not so much because the head coach suddenly waved magical potion over the field. The offensive line, first time all year, gave up no sacks and only one quarterback hit. Giants had one drop pass by Wan'Dale Robinson, who came back on the next play and made a terrific catch. They had 6 plays of 30 or more yards with a whole bunch of yards after catch and yards after contact. That execution of the players on the field is much more important than, telling me a quarterback has to do better, a coach has to overcome quarterback play. No. The whole team has to work in unison and help each other out. It's part of the reason why things went bad earlier in the season when the rest of the team was not doing their job and Daniel Jones was playing really well in the first third of the year. And they were letting him down. So that's it. Goofball says that Joe Flacco was 39. For some reason, I thought he was older. It just seems like he's 50, right? Like the one guy who wanted to put that up on the chat before. I know he's been around a long, long time. Isaac Moore says, you think Locke cemented themselves a bridge quarterback with that game? Where they go with someone with more experience? Maybe Locke can unlock something with more confidence. Isaac, I don't think that Drew Lock has done enough to be the bridge. I don't think so. He had one terrific game yesterday, but in the small handful of games that he's played, right now that appears to be an aberration. It was a terrific game. It was the best game of Drew Lock's career as an NFL quarterback. It's really hard to give that a tremendous amount of weight. Did he do it? Yes. Is it a fact? Yes. Small sample size. Isaac, I suspect it's probably not enough. I mean, just look at the resume of a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, who was scheduled to become an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. This guy's won a lot of games in this league, and he's gone to a Super Bowl. I mean, when you look at those resumes, or if Carr or Cousins wind up getting set free from their teams, look at their resumes. We're talking about two totally different worlds when you compare Drew Lock to some of those guys who might be available as a potential bridge. Jamal Lawson says you don't want a bridge quarterback because it never works. Well, let's see. Geno Smith, Russell Wilson, back in the day, Kurt Warner, Kerry Collins. Jamal, I'm sorry. I'm going to debate you on that one because the facts are bridge quarterbacks, Alex Smith, they've worked out many, many, many times. So I'm sorry. That's just factually an incorrect statement. You can have an opinion if you like, but facts, I got to push back. Sorry. Goofballs wants to see Bryce Ford Wheaton too. And let's see. All right, Jamal Lawson says, finally, it's our last comment of the night. Isn't it the head coach's job to get the team to have an identity or hold them to a standard? Does he not get any blame? Sure he does. As he says all himself, put it on me. He's right. Ultimately, he's the head coach. So ultimately, he's got to figure out a way based on what he's got to get the best out of them. Now, unfortunately, because of what the Giants have to put on the field during the second half of this season, that's not enough to give you a true identity. All he can be held accountable for is getting the most out of the preparation that he puts them through with what he's got. He's got limited resources. Okay? He's playing with second and third stringers on the depth chart. So what is he responsible for? He's responsible for making sure those guys are prepared, making sure that they stick together, and making sure that they give maximum effort on game day. Those are the three things that he's got to be able to do with the limited resources that he has at his disposal at this time. It is impossible for him to give them an ultra high standard when a bunch of these guys are depth chart guys. That's why they're depth chart guys. That's why they're backups. It's also impossible for him to establish an identity with depth chart guys. So I appreciate the thought. I do appreciate it, Jamal. Ultimately, in a perfect world, if you don't have to play a bunch of depth chart guys and a bunch of young guys who are growing and maturing and still finding out where their ceiling is, you're absolutely correct. Okay? Under a different context, you would be totally right. Bullseye, right in the middle. Under this context, doesn't work that way. Guys, that'll do it. We did over 3.5 hours of the Big Blue Breakdown live here on the New York Giants on SI YouTube channel and media network. I'm Paul Dottino. We will be back, and I thank everybody for being part of tonight's program. Again, we will be back with another live show. I'm not sure now if we'll do one next Monday night or next Wednesday night after the Giants play the Philadelphia Eagles in their season finale. Maybe, just maybe, if you guys want to send some comments, okay, if you want to send me some comments, I want to wish you a happy new year for sure. Healthy and happy and productive in every way possible. Enjoy yourselves. Have a great time, but be safe. If you guys want to leave some comments, either in the chat or on the YouTube page, do you want to come back on Monday for a wrap-up show Monday night? Do you want to go back to the regular Wednesday that we used to do and maybe give it a couple of days to breathe? I got to talk to the people at SI about it, but I'd like some direction from you folks because you have been so wonderful in sticking with the program and joining us here each and every week. So that'll do it for tonight. For those of you on the West Coast, hey, thanks for joining us at this late hour on the East Coast, because those of us who are in the New York metropolitan area, I think we're pretty tired right about now. And we got to stay up tomorrow because we got to go all the way through to the new year. How am I going to make it after this program? Lord only knows. I'm Paul Dottino. Folks, we'll see you next time on the Big Blue Breakdown Live. Thank you so much for joining us.